So hey, what's up guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. So in this video we are going to see what if Harry discovered Bellatrix true intention. So this is a movie, and don't worry, I will be not hosting the whole video. And if you want more movies like this or more videos like this, then you can suggest me new ideas for the next videos and movies. So comment down your ideas and suggestion in the comment box. So let's get in the video.
The nightmare didn't start with screaming. It started with quiet. Harry was on the narrow bed in his tiny room at number 12, Grimmauld Place, staring at a ceiling that wasn't really there, just a thin, oily shadow pretending to be plaster. The air felt too warm, too stale, like the house itself was holding its breath. Somewhere below, the old floorboards creaked with a sound that might have been settling wood, or might have been something prowling. His scar began to prickle. Not the sudden, knife-hot stab he'd come to dread. This was different, slow, deliberate, like someone tracing a fingertip along the inside of his skull. Harry tried to sit up. He couldn't. His body went heavy, pinned by a pressure that had nothing to do with blankets. The room dimmed, the shadows thickened, and then the ceiling melted away into darkness, as if someone had pulled a curtain aside. And Harry was elsewhere. A room lit by candles. Not the warm kind of candlelight you'd see at Hogwarts feasts. This was sharp cutting. The flames leaned as if the air itself was uneasy. The walls were old stone, damp with winter chill. There was a long table. Dark wine sat in a crystal decanter, untouched. A silver knife lay beside a folded piece of parchment, its blade perfectly aligned with the table's edge. Someone stood at the far end. Bellatrix Lestrange. Harry had seen her before, only once, but it had burned itself into his memory. Wild hair like a storm, eyes like knives, a grin that didn't belong on a human face. But the Bellatrix in front of him wasn't grinning. She wasn't laughing. She was still. Her hair was pulled back loosely, not tamed but controlled. Her posture was elegant in a way that was wrong, because elegance didn't belong on someone like her. She held a quill between two fingers, tapping it once, twice, thoughtfully, like a professor listening to a student's answer. Her eyes were bright, but not manic. Focused. A second figure stood near the wall, half in shadow. Masked. Tall. The kind of Death Eater who didn't speak unless spoken to. Another sat slouched in a chair like he was bored, but the way his hand rested near his wand told a different story. Bellatrix didn't look at either of them. She looked down at the parchment, and then she spoke. Her voice was soft. Calm. Everyone keeps saying the boy is reckless, she said, as if she was commenting on the weather. As if that is the flaw. The tall one shifted just slightly. Bellatrix lifted her eyes. No, she continued, and there was something cold in the word, something that made Harry's stomach tighten. Recklessness is only what it looks like from the outside. She tapped the quill again. The truth is he is loyal. He is starved for it. He will run toward it like a starving thing toward food. The bored one gave a short laugh. It was the sort of laugh meant to flatter, meant to invite her into the familiar madness everyone expected. Bellatrix didn't even glance his way. Harry's scar burned, a slow twist, as if whatever linked him to this moment wanted him to feel every syllable. Bellatrix leaned forward and turned the parchment around, showing it to no one in particular. Names. Dates. Locations. Harry couldn't read them clearly, like trying to see writing through water, but he caught fragments. A place that felt like stone and echo. A word that sounded like prophecy. And then a name that punched through the blur with sick clarity. Sirius. Harry's breath hitched, but it didn't matter. He had no lungs here. He was a thought pressed against someone else's reality. Bellatrix's mouth curved, not into a smile, not yet. More like a thought had pleased her. The boy doesn't need pain, she said. Pain is loud. Pain makes people sloppy. She lifted the quill and, with delicate precision, drew a small circle around the name. He needs choice. The tall Death Eater made a sound, maybe confusion, maybe doubt. Bellatrix's eyes lifted at last. When she looked up, Harry felt it like a blade tip finding a seam in armor. "Give him the wrong one," she said simply, "and he will do the rest for us." Her voice didn't rise. She didn't cackle. She didn't call anyone mudblood or shriek in delight. She spoke like she was moving pieces on a board. And for the first time in Harry's life, something inside him went very still. Because this wasn't madness. This was strategy. The bored Death Eater shifted again, still trying, to get her attention. And if he doesn't bite? Bellatrix finally looked at him, and the air sharpened. Candle flames seemed to stiffen. The room got colder. "Oh, he will," she said, "because he believes love makes him strong." She leaned in, voice dropping even lower. "We will show him it makes him predictable." Her fingers slid across the parchment to a second circled point. Another name, blurred but familiar enough to hurt. Granger. Then another. Longbottom. Harry's scar flared with an ache that was suddenly too hot, too bright. And Bellatrix tilted her head, as if she could sense something. Not see it exactly, but feel a brush of attention like a spider feeling the tremor of a web. Her mouth curved again, and this time the shape of it was wrong. Not a grin. A recognition. As for the boy himself, she murmured, almost to herself, "He wants to be a hero." She picked up the silver knife, turned it in the candlelight, watching the reflection run along the edge like liquid. "Let him." Her eyes lifted, and for one breathless moment Harry had the horrifying impression she was looking straight at him. Not through him. At him. Like she knew. Like she'd always known that one day he'd be watching. Bellatrix's lips parted, and she whispered, so softly it was almost affectionate, "Come when you're called." The knife flashed. Harry's scar exploded, and the world snapped back like a rubber band. Harry bolted upright in bed with a raw gasp that scraped his throat. The room around him was dark, the familiar gloom of Grimmauld Place pressing in. His heart hammered so hard it felt like it might crack a rib. Sweat clung to his skin. The sheets had twisted around his legs like restraints. His scar throbbed with a heat that didn't feel like rage. It felt like satisfaction. Harry clapped a hand to his forehead, breathing hard, trying to convince himself it had been a dream. But dreams didn't leave that kind of detail behind. Dreams didn't taste like candle smoke. Dreams didn't leave the echo of a calm voice in your ears. The boy doesn't need pain. He needs choice. He swung his legs off the bed and stood too fast. The room swayed. He caught himself on the bedpost, knuckles white. Somewhere downstairs, a door creaked. A murmur of voices. The house settling or people moving. Harry stared at the dark window, at the ragged edge of curtains. He imagined Bellatrix's hand circling Sirius's name. His stomach turned. Sirius was here, downstairs, probably leaning against the kitchen counter with that half-restless energy like he was always one step away from storming out of the house. Sirius, who had been trapped in Azkaban for years, now trapped again in a different prison. Sirius, who was finally family. Harry's hands curled in a fist before he realized it. He forced them open. Think. That was the first thing. Not panic. Not sprinting down the stairs. Not barging into a room full of adults and shouting Bellatrix is planning something. Like a madman. Because how would he explain it? I saw her. Through my scar. She's calm now, they'd stare. They'd ask if Voldemort was controlling him, if it was a trap, if he was sure, if he'd been sleeping badly. And they wouldn't understand the worst part. The worst part wasn't that Bellatrix wanted to hurt him. Harry had known that. The worst part was that she didn't want to hurt him first. She wanted to guide him. Use him. Make him choose the wrong thing and call it courage. Harry took a shaky breath, grabbed his glasses from the bedside table, and shoved them on. He didn't bother with shoes. The floor was cold, but the cold felt good, real. He stepped into the hallway. The house smelled like dust and old curtains and something bitter. As he crept toward the stairs, he heard the voices more clearly, low, guarded, tired. Order voices. He paused at the top landing, heart thudding again, and edged down until he could see the kitchen doorway. Light spilled out from within. Not bright, but steady. A lantern on the table. Maybe. The kitchen at Grimald Place always looked like it had been dragged out of a dark lake. Grimy, cluttered, and stubbornly alive. Inside, he could see shapes. Remus, sitting with a cup in his hand, looking older than he should. Mrs. Weasley moving like a general organizing an army of pots and pans. Kingsley's tall silhouette leaned against the wall, calm as stone. And Sirius. Sirius stood near the sink, sleeves rolled up, hair a little wild, jaw tense as if he'd been biting back words all night. He was listening, but not really. His gaze kept flicking toward the door like he wanted to escape it. Harry's throat tightened. He watched Sirius for a moment, and a terrible thought rose up uninvited. Bellatrix knows how much you need him. Harry backed away from the kitchen before anyone could spot him. Upstairs again, into his room, he shut the door as softly as he could and leaned against it, breathing like he'd just run a mile. He needed proof. Or at least a plan. Because Bellatrix Lestrange wasn't just a monster in the dark. She was a monster who wrote lists. Harry crossed to his small desk and yanked open the drawer, fingers trembling as he found a scrap of parchment and a quill. He hesitated, staring at the blank page. What do you write when the thing you saw feels like poison? He forced himself to start anyway. Bellatrix, not random.com, when unobserved, uses love as lever Sirius/Hermione/Neville. Possible targets, trap equals choice. Not pain. Come when you're called. His quill scratched hard enough to tear the parchment. He didn't care. He sat back, staring at the words, and felt something shift inside him. Something heavy, something new. Not rage. Not fear. A cold awareness. Harry pressed his fingertips to his scar again. It still pulsed faintly, as if somewhere far away someone had smiled and hadn't bothered to hide it. And then, just as he began to relax, just as his breathing steadied, his scar gave a tiny, sharp stab. Not Voldemort hot, not exploding. A tap, like a finger against glass. Harry froze, because in the silence after that tap, he heard something in the back of his mind, so faint it could have been imagination. A woman's breath, close as a whisper. Not laughter, not screaming, just a soft, satisfied murmur, like someone confirming a piece had moved exactly where she wanted it. Harry stared at the parchment on his desk. Then he slowly, carefully folded it and slid it into his pocket like it was a wand. He didn't know how the game was played yet, but he knew one thing with sick certainty. Bellatrix had already started. Harry didn't sleep again. He lay in the dark with his eyes open, listening to Grimald Place breathe. The house had a way of making silence feel crowded. Pipes ticked, walls sighed, something scuttled in places that weren't quite walls. And every now and then, just when Harry's heartbeat slowed, his scar gave a faint pulse like a reminder. Come when you're called. He kept seeing it. Candlelight, Bellatrix's steady hands, the silver knife. Not her laughter. Her calm. By morning, the fear had settled into something worse. Not panic. A plan. Harry went downstairs early, when the kitchen was only half awake. A lantern burned on the table. Mrs. Weasley moved around with sharp, efficient motions, as if keeping everyone fed was the same thing as keeping them safe. Ron was already there, hair sticking up, looking like he'd been dragged out of bed by a spell. Hermione sat beside him, back straight, mug between her hands, eyes scanning the room the way they always did when she was thinking hard. Sirius leaned against the counter, arms folded, jaw tight. Remus sat at the table with a paper in front of him, the Daily Prophet, but his eyes weren't really on it. They were on Sirius, drifting there like a habit he couldn't break. Moody wasn't in the room, but his presence was. You could always feel it in the way conversations stopped when someone came too close to the door. Harry stepped into the kitchen. Morning, Ron mumbled. Hermione lifted her eyes, and something in her expression sharpened. She saw it instantly. Harry's posture, the tension in his shoulders, the fact that he looked like he'd aged a year overnight. "You look terrible," she said, not unkindly. "Thanks," Harry muttered. Sirius's head turned. His face softened for a second, like he was about to make a joke. Then his gaze flicked to Harry's scar, and the softness vanished. "You all right?" Sirius asked, voice low. Harry swallowed. He almost said no. Almost said Bellatrix is planning you like a move on a board. Almost said she knows I'm here. Instead, he nodded. Just didn't sleep. Sirius's mouth twitched. "Welcome to Grimmauld Place." Mrs. Weasley made a disapproving noise without looking up. "No one sleeps properly in this dreadful house." Sirius's eyes flashed. "It's my house." "It's a house full of dark rubbish," Mrs. Weasley snapped. It was like they'd been having the same argument for years, not weeks. Harry barely heard it. Because Creature had appeared. He shuffled into the kitchen with that hunched posture, towel over one arm, eyes like dull pebbles. He moved like he belonged to the shadows, like he'd grown out of them. He didn't look at Harry. He didn't look at Sirius, either, not directly. But Harry saw something that made his stomach turn. Creature's eyes flicked, just once, towards Sirius. Not fear. Not hatred. Something else. Assessment. The way Bellatrix had looked at a parchment. Harry's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Creature muttered as he moved, too low to catch, a stream of words like he was talking to himself. Ron wrinkled his nose. "Honestly," Ron whispered, "how can you stand having him around?" Sirius's voice went flat. "You get used to it." Harry watched Creature's hands. Old, cracked, trembling. But the trembling didn't look like weakness. It looked like contained anger. Creature set down a plate of toast like he was placing something on a grave, then shuffled away. And as he passed Harry, he hissed, so softly no one else heard. "Master is blind." Harry froze. Creature didn't stop walking, didn't look back. He just vanished through the doorway, like the house had swallowed him. Harry's skin prickled. He stared at the spot Creature had been, heart thudding, mind racing. Master is blind. He wasn't talking about Sirius being cruel. He was talking about Sirius being unaware. Harry sat slowly. Hermione's knee bumped his under the table, light, deliberate, a silent question. Harry looked at her, and he knew, in that way you know things when there isn't time to pretend, that he couldn't carry this alone. Not this. Not when Sirius was in the room. Not when Bellatrix's plan had his name circled in ink somewhere. Harry waited until Mrs. Weasley turned to the stove and Sirius got pulled into an argument with Remus about whether they'd heard anything from Hestia Jones. Then, keeping his face blank, Harry leaned toward Hermione and Ron. After breakfast, he murmured, "Upstairs. I need to show you something." Ron frowned. "What kind of—" Hermione touched Ron's arm. "All right." Her eyes stayed on Harry. They didn't ask again. They just understood. They slipped away as soon as they could, without looking suspicious. Grimmauld Place was full of adults who watched teenagers like they were one spark away from setting the world on fire. Harry led them up to his room, shut the door, and pulled the scrap of parchment from his pocket. Hermione's eyes darted over it, reading fast. Ron leaned over her shoulder. As Hermione read, her face changed, piece by piece, like someone rearranging a puzzle until the picture became impossible to ignore. She looked up. "You saw this?" Harry nodded, throat tight. "Through my scar. But it wasn't Voldemort. It was her." Ron's eyebrows shot up. "Bellatrix?" Harry nodded again. "And she wasn't." He struggled for the word. "She wasn't like in the pensive memory. She wasn't shouting. She was planning." Ron shifted, uneasy. Maybe she was just like, being creepy in a different way. Harry gave a short, humorless laugh. "No, this wasn't I like paying Bellatrix." Hermione's voice dropped. "What did she say exactly?" Harry stared at the paper like it might burn him through his pocket. "That I don't need pain. that I need choice, that she'll give me the wrong one. Silence hit the room like a cold spell. Ron swallowed. That sounds like Voldemort. That's what I thought, Harry said quickly. But it was her voice, and she talked about Sirius. He forced a name out. She circled it. Hermione's gaze snapped to him. And Neville. And me. Harry nodded, unable to meet her eyes for long. Hermione's face went pale, but her voice stayed steady. Okay, then we treat it like intelligence. Not prophecy, not panic. Ron blinked. Treat it like what? Hermione leaned forward, eyes sharp, like a warning that we have to verify. Harry felt something in his chest unclench slightly. That was it. That was exactly what he needed. Someone to take the fear and turn it into steps. Hermione tapped the parchment. If Bellatrix is actually strategic, then she'll have patterns, habits, preferences, methods. We find those. We see if your vision fits them. Ron looked skeptical. How are we supposed to find patterns? It's not like we can. What? Interview her? Harry's mind flashed back to Creature's hiss. Maybe we don't need to interview her, Harry said slowly. Maybe she's already here. Hermione's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Harry told them about Creature. Master is blind. The way Creature's eyes had flicked to Sirius, measuring. The way he'd moved through the room like he owned the shadows. Ron's face twisted. That elf hates Sirius. Everyone knows that. Yes, Hermione said, voice careful. But hatred and loyalty aren't always separate things. House elves can be forced, Ron cut in, remembering Dobby with a grimace. Hermione shook her head. Not forced exactly. Bound. Twisted. Creature's loyalty is complicated. Harry's scar gave a faint throb, as if approving of the word. Hermione stood, restless. We need something concrete. Something that isn't just a feeling. Harry reached under his mattress and pulled out his invisibility cloak. The fabric shimmered like spilled moonlight. Ron stared. You're not serious. Harry met his eyes. I am. Hermione's mouth tightened. Harry, if Creature is involved, that's dangerous. If he's telling someone things, then Sirius is in danger, Harry said blunt. His voice didn't shake. That was the part that scared him most. And we're sitting here eating toast like nothing's happening. Ron rubbed his face. Mate, even if Creature is telling someone stuff, what can we do? Tell Sirius? He'll just shout at him and Creature will, I don't know, explode or something. Hermione looked between them. We don't confront. Not yet. We watch. Harry's pulse quickened. Yes. Hermione took a breath, thinking fast. Creature is tied to this house. He can't leave without permission, except he can, Harry said, remembering Dobby, remembering the rules weren't as simple as adults like to pretend. He can apparate, can't he? House elves can do magic wizards can't. Hermione's eyes narrowed. If he's communicating, it could be through apparition, or the fireplace, or her gaze flicked to the corner of Harry's room, where the dark hearth sat and used. Here. Ron looked like he wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. Because this wasn't a prank. This was war. Harry slipped the cloak over his shoulders. Hermione grabbed his arm before he could move. One rule, she said quietly. If we find anything, we don't act alone. We bring it to an adult. Harry swallowed. Dumbledore. Hermione hesitated. Yes, or at least Remus. Someone who will listen. Harry nodded. Ron sighed like he'd just accepted he was about to do something incredibly stupid. Fine. But if I die because of an elf, I'm haunting you. Harry almost smiled. Almost. They waited. It turned out waiting in Grimmauld Place was harder than fighting a troll. Time in that house stretched like cold syrup. Adults came and went. Voices rose and fell. Sirius stormed out of the kitchen, then came back like he couldn't stand being away from people, even if he hated being trapped with them. Creature didn't show himself again until late afternoon. Harry saw him first through a crack in the banister as he shuffled down the corridor below, muttering to himself, clutching something wrapped in cloth. Hermione's hand tightened around Harry's sleeve under the cloak. Ron, not under the cloak, stayed behind upstairs with Hermione, visible, bored-looking, pretending to read a book while actually acting as lookout. Harry moved silently, bare feet careful on the worn carpet. Creature reached the drawing room. Harry followed him inside. The drawing room was cold and dusty, draped with moth-eaten curtains. The black family tapestry hung on the wall like a living thing. Names embroidered in gold thread, blood traitors burned out like scars. Harry's gaze snagged on the name Bellatrix Black, married to Lestrange, glittering with cruel elegance. Creature paused beneath it. For a heartbeat, Harry thought the elf was looking up at Bellatrix's name the way Dobby had looked at Harry. Not with fear, with reverence. Creature whispered something. Harry leaned closer, straining. "Mistress," Creature breathed. "Mistress will be pleased." Harry's stomach dropped. Creature hobbled toward the fireplace. He crouched, reached into the cloth bundle, and pulled out a small handful of powder, darker than flue powder, almost gray, as if mixed with ash. Harry's pulse hammered. Creature tossed it into the hearth. Green flames roared to life. Harry stayed frozen under the cloak, willing his breath to quiet. Creature leaned in and said, clearly, carefully, "Narcissa Malfoy." The flames shifted. A face appeared. Pale, beautiful, tense. Narcissa Malfoy stared out of the fire like a ghost. Harry's hands went cold. So Creature could contact them, could speak to them whenever he wanted. Narcissa's eyes flicked around, sharp. "Creature," she said, voice clipped. "Be quick." Creature bowed, so low his nose nearly brushed the hearth. "Yes, mistress." Harry's scar pulsed once, faint. Narcissa's mouth tightened. "Has there been movement?" Creature's ears twitched. "The blood traitor is restless," he croaked. "He prowls like a caged dog. He speaks of leaving. He hates the house. He hates the family name." Narcissa's face hardened, and for a second she looked less like Draco's mother and more like a black, ice and pride. "And the boy?" Creature lifted his head slightly, eyes shining. "He watches," he whispered. "He listens. He thinks he is clever." Harry's stomach clenched. Narcissa's gaze sharpened. "He's suspicious?" Creature's mouth twisted. He looks at Creature like Creature is dirt, but he watches dirt because dirt hides worms. Harry felt Hermione's earlier words echo. "We treat it like intelligence." Narcissa's eyes narrowed. "You're sure?" Creature bobbed. "Yes, mistress." Narcissa leaned closer to the flames. "Then be careful. The Dark Lord doesn't like surprises. And my sister." Her lips tightened as if saying the word tasted bitter and sweet at once. "My sister will want to know if the boy is learning too early." There. Harry's heart slammed. My sister. Not Voldemort's order. Bellatrix's interest. Narcissa's voice dropped. Has anyone spoken to him? Fed him anything? Creature's eyes gleamed. Not yet, mistress. But Creature hears things. Creature can guide. Creature can. Misdirect, Narcissa said, finishing the sentence like she'd rehearsed it. Good. Harry's scar gave a sharper sting, like a warning, don't move. Narcissa's face turned slightly, like she was listening to something off-screen. She's here, Narcissa muttered. Creature's entire body stiffened with reverence. He pressed his forehead to the floor. A shadow moved behind Narcissa. Harry couldn't see the face at first. Then the person leaned down, and candlelight caught eyes that were too bright. Bellatrix. Even through green fire, even through distance, Harry felt it like a hand closing around his throat. Bellatrix's expression was not wild. It was curious. She leaned into view, and Narcissa stepped aside like she was making room for a queen. Bellatrix's gaze swept the room. Not randomly, not distractedly. Precisely. Harry's breath caught. For a terrifying second, it felt like she could see through the cloak. Like she could see the idea of him. Bellatrix's lips curved, not a grin. A small, knowing smile. Creature, she purred, voice like silk dragged over a blade. Tell me, has the boy been having dreams? Harry's scar burned. Creature bowed lower, trembling with devotion. Yes, mistress. He wakes. He paces. He watches. Bellatrix's smile deepened. Good. Narcissa's voice was tight. Bella, if he's suspicious. Bellatrix lifted a finger, and Narcissa fell silent instantly. Harry's skin crawled. Bellatrix leaned closer to the flames, eyes bright with private amusement. Let him be suspicious, she whispered. Suspicion is not wisdom. It only feels like it. Her gaze flicked, suddenly, to the tapestry on the wall. Harry's blood turned to ice, because Bellatrix's eyes landed exactly where her own name was embroidered, as if she were checking her reflection in it. Then her eyes shifted just slightly, toward the space beside the tapestry, toward the exact patch of air where Harry stood, hidden. Harry couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Bellatrix's head tilted, like she was listening for the sound of his heartbeat. And then she smiled, slow and satisfied. Come when you're called, she murmured softly, and the words were so quiet they were almost tender. Harry's scar flared so sharply his vision went white. He stumbled backward. A floorboard creaked. Not loud, just enough. Bellatrix's eyes snapped up. The smile vanished. For the first time, her control slipped, and a monster underneath flashed through, fast, hungry, delighted. Creature, she said, voice razor-thin. Was that? Harry turned and bolted. He didn't run like a kid sneaking around. He ran like someone escaping a blade. Behind him, the green flames hissed out. The room went dark again. Harry flew up the stairs, cloak fluttering, scar screaming, heart smashing against his ribs. He burst into his room, slammed the door quietly with shaking hands, and ripped the cloak off. Hermione and Ron were there instantly, faces alarmed. What happened? Hermione demanded. Harry's mouth opened. No sound came out at first. Then he forced it. Creature, he contacted Narcissa. And Harry swallowed hard. Bellatrix was there. Ron went white. You saw her. Harry nodded, breathing hard. She asked if I've been having dreams. Hermione's eyes widened, horror dawning. She knows. Harry's scar pulsed again, slower now, like a satisfied tap at the inside of his skull. He looked at Hermione, then Ron, and something settled in his chest with grim clarity. This is real, he said hoarsely. This isn't just in my head. Hermione's jaw set. Then we tell someone who can act. Ron swallowed. Sirius? Harry hesitated, remembering Sirius's temper, his hatred of Creature, the way he treated the elf like dirt in his own house. If they told Sirius, Sirius might explode, might confront Creature directly, and Creature would twist it, lie, run, betray. And Bellatrix would be waiting for that exact reaction, smiling calmly as she moved another piece. Harry clenched his fists, forcing himself to think like the version of himself Bellatrix didn't expect. Not Sirius first, Harry said quietly. Hermione nodded instantly, understanding. Dumbledore. Harry's heart dropped to the name, because Dumbledore felt far away, unreachable, like a star you couldn't touch. But this was bigger than pride, bigger than anger, bigger than being treated like a child. Bellatrix was in his house, through Creature. Bellatrix was watching him learn, and she was enjoying it. Harry took a shaky breath. We go to Dumbledore, he said. And as he said it, his scar gave one more small sting, like laughter with no sound. Because somewhere in some candlelit room, Bellatrix Lestrange had just confirmed something too. The boy had moved. They didn't go to Sirius. Not because Harry didn't want to God, he wanted to so badly it made his chest ache, but because Harry could already see how it would go. Sirius would hear, Creature betrayed us, and his eyes would go flint hard. He'd storm into the drawing room, shout at the elf, and Creature would do what he always did: shrink, twist the truth, weaponize every cruel word Sirius ever spat at him, and then, somehow, slip through a loophole Harry didn't even know existed. And Bellatrix would be waiting for that exact mess with a calm little smile. So Harry forced himself to do the smarter thing. He found Remus Lupin. Remus was in the hallway outside the kitchen, half-shadowed, like he belonged there. He looked up when Harry approached and frowned immediately, because Remus had that kind of quiet attention that noticed the difference between tired and hunted. "Hermione," Harry said, and Hermione stepped forward beside him like a shield made of bones and certainty. Ron, too. Ron hovered at Harry's shoulder, pale and furious in that helpless way people got when they wanted to hit something they couldn't reach. Remus's eyes flicked over their faces. "All right," he said softly, as if he'd just decided this was serious enough to lower his voice. "What happened?" Harry swallowed. The words tasted like ash. He didn't give Remus the whole thing. He didn't start with candlelight and knives, didn't start with how Bellatrix's voice had slid into his skull like silk. He started with what they could prove. "Creature called Narcissa Malfoy through the fireplace," Harry said. "In the drawing room. He reported on Sirius and me." Remus didn't move. Not a flinch, not a blink, but something behind his eyes tightened. Hermione stepped in, quick and precise. "We heard Narcissa. She warned Creature to be careful. She said Bellatrix would want to know if Harry was learning too early." Remus's gaze snapped to Hermione. "You're certain it was Narcissa?" Hermione nodded. Her voice, her face in the blue flames. Ron swallowed, and Bellatrix was there. That did it. Remus's expression didn't change much. Remus's expressions rarely did, but the air around him did. Like a storm had shifted direction. "You saw Bellatrix in the fire?" he asked, calm enough to be terrifying. Harry nodded once. "She asked if I'd been having dreams." Remus's eyes flickered briefly to Harry's scar. Harry felt sick. He'd known that the scar was the center of it. But hearing someone else connect the dots out loud made it feel more real, more unavoidable. Remus exhaled slowly, as if he was choosing every next word with care. "Come with me," he said. He didn't lead them to Sirius. He led them to Kingsley Shacklebolt. Kingsley was in the kitchen, standing by the window with his back to the room like he was guarding it. He looked unhurried, relaxed, until Remus spoke in a voice that held something sharp under the surface. "Kingsley." Kingsley turned. His eyes took in Harry, Hermione, and Ron in one sweep. "What's happened?" he asked. Remus didn't answer. He simply said, "We need Albus." Kingsley didn't hesitate. That, more than anything, made Harry's stomach twist. Kingsley nodded once and stepped toward the fire. "Everyone else out," he said gently, and somehow gently became an order. Mrs. Weasley huffed, offended, but Remus gave her a look, quiet, pleading, and she left with Ron and Hermione, pulling the door shut behind her. Harry stayed. Kingsley's wand flicked. The kitchen door clicked, the sound sealing like a lock. Harry's mouth went dry. "Is he coming?" he asked, and hated how small his voice sounded. Kingsley's face didn't soften, but his tone did. "If Albus can come, he'll come." Kingsley tossed a pinch of flue powder into the hearth. Blue flames rose, not the sickly green Creature had used, but a clear, cold blue that looked like moonlight had learned to burn. Kingsley leaned in. "Dumbledore," he said. For a moment, there was only flame. Then a head appeared, silver hair, half-moon spectacles, eyes like winter sky. "Dumbledore." Harry's throat tightened so suddenly it hurt. "Kingsley," Dumbledore said, as if he'd been expecting him. His gaze shifted slightly. "Harry." Harry's heart dropped. "He knew I was here." "Of course he did." Dumbledore's eyes moved over Harry's face with quiet precision. Not judgment, not even surprise. Recognition. "I understand there has been a breach," Dumbledore said. Harry stared at him. "You already?" "A house like number 12 rarely keeps secrets for long," Dumbledore said mildly. And Creature has never been particularly fond of keeping them for us. Harry's hands curled into fists. He's contacting the Malfoys. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. Tell me what you know. So Harry did. He told him about the drawing room, the powder, the names spoken into the fire. Hermione's voice came through in Harry's memory like a checklist. Narcissa's warning, the way she made room for Bellatrix without complaint. Harry told him Bellatrix's question, has the boy been having dreams? And the way she'd said come when you're called like it was a lullaby. Harry expected disbelief. Or worse, pity. Instead, Dumbledore, listen like this, was exactly the kind of information he wanted. When Harry finished, the kitchen felt colder. Dumbledore's voice was quiet. Thank you, he said. You did not confront Creature. Harry blinked. No. That was wise, Dumbledore said simply. Kingsley's face remained calm, but his posture shifted. Albus, he said, this is a direct line into our headquarters. Yes, Dumbledore agreed, and a direct line into Sirius Black. Harry's chest went tight. Then we have to stop it. Dumbledore's gaze held Harry's for a long moment. And then he said something Harry wasn't expecting. There are two truths you must understand about Bellatrix Lestrange. Harry's scar pulsed, faint like it was listening. Dumbledore raised one finger. First, she is not pretending to be mad. Harry frowned. But no, Dumbledore said, gentle but firm. Her cruelty, her delight in pain, her obsession, these are real. They're not theater. They're part of her. Harry's stomach sank. Somehow that was worse than it's a mask. A mask meant you could peel it off and find a person underneath. If it was real, then there was nothing underneath. Dumbledore raised a second finger. Second, her madness is disciplined. Harry stared. Dumbledore's eyes were very clear behind his spectacles. Do you understand? Bellatrix's mind is not a wildfire that burns without direction. It is a blade that burns on purpose. Harry felt a chill spread down his spine. Dumbledore continued. She uses unpredictability to make people stop looking for pattern. She laughs, so they do not notice where she has placed her hand. Harry saw it again. Bellatrix, circling names, as a librarian. She is, Dumbledore finished, one of Voldemort's most effective instruments. Kingsley's jaw tightened slightly. Then we treat her like an instrument, he said. We remove her reach. Dumbledore's gaze shifted to Kingsley. Precisely. Harry found his voice again. She looked right at me, he said hoarsely. In the fire? Like she knew where I was. Dumbledore's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went distant, thoughtful. There are several explanations, Dumbledore said. None of them are comforting. Harry's hands clenched harder. Tell me. Dumbledore didn't flinch from the request. It is possible she sensed you through your scars connection, if she was near Voldemort recently, and her mind brushed the same channel. It is possible she is skilled enough in legilimency to feel attention. Or it is possible, and here Dumbledore's voice went very quiet, that Creature warned her in some subtle way we did not see. Harry felt bile rise. Creature watches dirt because dirt hides worms. Dumbledore's gaze returned to Harry. But whether she truly saw you or merely wanted you to believe she did, the effect is the same. Harry swallowed. She's baiting me. Yes, Dumbledore said simply. Harry's chest burned with anger. So what do we do? Dumbledore's eyes softened, not with pity, but with something like respect. We become difficult to predict. Harry stared. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Dumbledore continued. Kingsley, Remus, you will inform Moody. Quietly. I want no shouting. No grand accusations that will drive Creature into desperation. Kingsley nodded, already turning to move. Dumbledore looked back at Harry. And you, he said, and the word carried weight. You will listen closely, Harry. Harry's throat tightened. I am. You are not to confront Bellatrix, Dumbledore said. Harry flinched. I wasn't. You are not to duel her, Dumbledore went on, voice calm as stone. Not now. Not alone. Perhaps not ever. Harry felt his face heat. I'm not. This is not an insult, Dumbledore said gently. It is mathematics. Harry's mouth closed. Dumbledore's eyes held his. Bellatrix Lestrange is an elite duelist. She has killed trained Aurors. She casts quickly, often non-verbally, and she fights under pressure like it is air. Anger will not protect you. Bravery will not protect you. Harry's scar throbbed faintly, as if agreeing. What will protect you, Dumbledore said, is preparation, discipline, and the ability to refuse the move she is offering. Harry swallowed hard. And Sirius? Dumbledore's gaze dimmed with something like sorrow. Sirius is vulnerable, yes. Harry's voice cracked. Then tell him. I will, Dumbledore said. But carefully. Harry's hand shook. He'll hate that creature. He will, Dumbledore agreed. And that hatred will help creature if it is indulged. Harry stared at him. Dumbledore was saying it plainly. Sirius's anger was a weakness Bellatrix could use. Dumbledore's voice softened. Sirius does not deserve betrayal, Harry, but he does need precision. Harry swallowed. Ow! Dumbledore's eyes flicked toward the kitchen door, where shadows shifted faintly with movement outside. Then he looked back to Harry and said, with words that leave no loopholes. Harry's stomach tightened. Dumbledore continued. House elves obey the intent of an order only when the order is clear. When it is vague, they obey the letter and twist the rest. Hermione would love this, Harry thought wildly. Hermione would write it down like it was a spell formula. And you, Harry, Dumbledore said again, must learn something as well. Harry's throat tightened. A clemency? Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. Yes. Harry felt his stomach drop. Snape. The word might as well have been poison. Dumbledore's eyes flickered, understanding without Harry saying it. Not as it was taught to you before, Dumbledore said quietly. Not through humiliation. Not through cruelty. Harry swallowed. Then how? Dumbledore's voice was steady. You will not empty your mind, Harry. You will anchor it. Harry stared. Dumbledore leaned slightly closer to the flames, and for a moment the blue light made him look like a portrait, something old and powerful and impossibly calm. Your mind is not a door, Dumbledore said. It is a house. Build rooms. Place locks. Decide what belongs where. And when something pounds at the wall, you do not open it out of panic. You ask who is knocking. Harry's breathing slowed, just a fraction. That made sense. Not be nothing. Be structured. Dumbledore's eyes softened. Remus will help you begin, and if necessary, I will intervene personally. Harry's throat tightened at the word personally. He hadn't said it, but it sat in him like a wound. Dumbledore avoiding him. Dumbledore keeping distance. Dumbledore leaving him alone with visions. Dumbledore didn't apologize outright. He did something worse and better. He acknowledged it without flinching. I have kept myself away, Dumbledore said quietly, because I feared Voldemort would use your connection to reach me. That fear was not unfounded, but it has had costs. Harry's mouth went dry. Dumbledore's eyes held his. I cannot undo those costs. I can only act now. Harry's chest hurt. He wanted to say, why didn't you trust me? He wanted to say, I'm 14, and I'm doing this alone. Instead, he swallowed and forced out the only thing that mattered. Then act, Harry said hoarsely. Dumbledore's expression warmed, not with pride, not with approval, but with that rare look that meant he saw Harry as a person making a choice. I intend to, Dumbledore said. He glanced at Kingsley, who had returned quietly to stand by the hearth again. Kingsley, Dumbledore said, bring Sirius to me, not to the kitchen, somewhere private, somewhere he will not feel cornered. Kingsley nodded once. I'll do it. Dumbledore looked back at Harry. And Harry, one more thing. Harry braced himself. Dumbledore's hand emerged into the fire briefly, as if the flames were a doorway. In his palm was a small object, a plain wooden box, no bigger than a snitch case. "Take this," Dumbledore said. Harry reached forward. The box was warm when his fingers closed around it, warm in a way that felt alive, not heated. "What is it?" Harry asked. "A means of verification," Dumbledore said quietly. "You have learned, painfully, that visions can lure. This will help you confirm reality before you move." Harry's throat tightened. Like a way to contact you?" Dumbledore's eyes glinted faintly. "A way to contact help. Not always me. That would be unwise." Harry nodded, understanding even if he didn't like it. "Do not use it casually," Dumbledore warned. "Do not use it for comfort. Use it for truth." Harry clutched the box like it was a lifeline. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened again. "Now listen carefully, Harry. This is the heart of it." Harry held still. "We will not merely silence Creature," Dumbledore said. "We will use him." Harry's stomach flipped. "Use him?" Kingsley's voice was calm, almost approving. "Turn the channel." Dumbledore nodded. "If Bellatrix believes she has an ear inside our walls, we can decide what that ear hears." Harry stared at the fire, mind racing. "But Creature, he worships her." "Worship is powerful," Dumbledore said softly. "It makes servants reckless. It makes them believe they are cleverer than they are." Harry remembered Bellatrix's words. "Suspicion is not wisdom. It only feels like it." Dumbledore continued. "We will give Creature very clear commands. We will watch him, and we will feed him information that leads Bellatrix away from what she wants." Harry's scar pulsed faintly, as if something far away had shifted. Dumbledore's eyes went very serious. "But to do this, Harry, you must accept something difficult." Harry's throat tightened. "What?" "You must stop thinking of Bellatrix as a storm," Dumbledore said, "and start thinking of her as a hunter." Harry swallowed. "A hunter," Dumbledore continued, "does not chase prey that runs where it expects. A hunter waits where prey chooses to go." Harry's fingers tightened around the wooden box. Dumbledore's voice dropped. "Bellatrix will offer you choices designed to feel noble, designed to feel like love." Harry's chest tightened at the word love. "And you," Dumbledore said, "must learn to pause, to verify, to move only when you're certain the move is yours." Harry breathed in slowly, shaky but steadying. "All right," he whispered. Dumbledore's eyes softened. "Good." The blue flames began to dim as if the connection was ending. "One last instruction," Dumbledore said, voice quiet and sharp as a wand tip. Harry looked up. "Do not let Bellatrix believe you are afraid," Dumbledore said. "Not because fear is shameful. Fear is sensible. But because Bellatrix does not feed on fear." Harry's stomach clenched. Dumbledore finished, eyes very clear. "She feeds on reaction." And then Dumbledore's head vanished from the flames. The fire collapsed back into embers. The kitchen felt suddenly too small. Harry stood there, clutching the wooden box, scar throbbing faintly like a bruise. Kingsley placed a steady hand on Harry's shoulder for the briefest moment, heavy, grounding. "You did the right thing," Kingsley said quietly. Harry nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. Bellatrix had asked if he'd been having dreams. Bellatrix had noticed. And now the order was going to turn Creature into a weapon. A trap. A countermove. Harry looked down at the wooden box in his hands. He didn't open it yet. He didn't need to, because he could already feel, deep in his bones, the shape of the game changing. And somewhere in the house, somewhere behind walls that listened, Creature shuffled past in the corridor, muttering in a voice like dry leaves. "Mistress will be pleased." Harry's grip tightened. Not with rage, with control. The wooden box felt heavier the longer Harry held it. Not because it weighed much, barely anything, really, but because it meant Dumbledore had finally placed something in Harry's hands that wasn't just a warning or a burden. It was a tool, a vote of trust, and that made everything more dangerous. Harry carried it upstairs like it might bite. Hermione and Ron followed him into his room, shutting the door softly behind them. Grimmauld Place always seemed to notice when doors closed too hard, like the house enjoyed punishing loudness. Harry set the box on his desk. Hermione stared at it, as if it might start talking. "What is it?" Ron asked, voice low. "A portkey? A bomb? Accursed." "It's from Dumbledore," Harry said. He kept his fingers near it anyway, just in case. Hermione took a careful step forward. "He said it's for verification." Ron blinked. Verification of what? Harry's scar gave a faint throb, like it was answering for him. "Of reality," Harry said. "So if I see something through the scar, I don't just run." Hermione's eyes sharpened. "So it's a way to check whether it's a lure." Harry nodded once. Saying it out loud made his stomach twist. Ron leaned over the desk, but didn't touch the box. "All right," he muttered. "Open it, then." Harry hesitated. Part of him wanted to keep it closed, keep it perfect, a promise that help existed. Opening it felt like turning promise into responsibility. Hermione's voice softened slightly. "Harry, it's better to know." Harry swallowed and flipped the clasp. The lid opened with a soft click. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a small object that looked almost disappointingly ordinary, a thin shard of mirror, about the length of Harry's index finger. Its edges were smooth, not sharp. A faint rune, so faint Harry almost missed it, curve along one corner like a sleepy crescent moon. Ron frowned. "That's it, a bit of mirror." Hermione leaned in, and her whole expression changed. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, that's clever." Harry blinked. "You know what it is?" Hermione didn't take her eyes off the shard. "Not exactly, but look at the rune. That's a binding mark. It's like it's been paired. Like," she searched for the words, excited and grim at the same time, "like a two-way mirror, but safer. Modified. Key." Ron stared. "Two-way mirror? Like talking?" Hermione nodded. "If there's another shard somewhere, held by someone in the Order, then Harry can show them what he's seeing or ask them what's happening. It's not perfect, but it's a check. A human check." Harry stared at it, feeling something tight in his chest loosen slightly. It wasn't magic that made him invincible. It was magic that made him less alone. Hermione's excitement cooled into practicality. "We need to figure out who has the other shard." Harry remembered Dumbledore's words, "Not always me." Kingsley, Harry guessed, or Remus, someone on watch. Ron scratched his head. "So, if you get a vision like Sirius is screaming in agony, you just look into the mirror and go, 'Hey mate, is Sirius actually dying right now?'" Hermione shot him a look. "Ron." "No," Harry said, and his voice came out hard. "That's exactly it." Ron's face sobered instantly. Harry picked up the mirror shard. For a second, he saw only his own eye, green, tired, too old for 14. Then, faintly, as if the mirror was remembering it belonged to someone else too, the surface shimmered. The image cleared just a fraction, enough to show a blurred smear of blue flame. Someone was holding the other side. Someone was watching. Harry's breath caught. Hermione reached for parchment. Not one sheet, 3. She smoothed them out like she was preparing to do an exam. "What are you doing?" Ron asked warily. Hermione's eyes were already working faster than the rest of them. "We're building the board." Harry's scar pulsed. Hermione grabbed her quill and wrote, in neat capitals, "Bellatrix Lestrange, working profile." Under it, she listed, "Fighting style, fast caster, nonverbal, thrives under pressure. Weapons, fear, bait, humiliation, hostage situations, misdirection. Patterns, theatrical displays often cover logistical objectives. Priorities, mission first, revealed by how she speaks when unobserved. Weaknesses, overconfidence, need for control, obsession with the scene. Likely moves, isolate targets, force moral choices, exploit loyalty. Ron stared. How do you know she's a fast caster? Hermione pointed at Harry. Because Harry saw her planning, not just laughing. People who plan like that don't fight like idiots. Harry's stomach turned, but he didn't argue. It felt true. Hermione added another heading. Order breach, creature channel. Contacts, Narcissa Malfoy Bellatrix present. Method, flue fireplace, drawing room, plus alternate powder. Content, Sirius's mood, Harry's behavior. Risk, targeted lure/forced choice trap. She paused, and her quill hovered. Then she wrote, Our rules. No solo acción. Verify before moving mirror shard. Watch for pattern, not drama. Don't feed Bellatrix reactions. Harry stared at those last words and felt his jaw tighten. Because his whole life, he'd survived by reacting. And now reacting was exactly what Bellatrix wanted. Hermione looked up. We need to tell Remus what we learned about the mirror, and we need to tell him about the way Bellatrix looked at the tapestry. Harry's skin crawled. She felt me. Hermione nodded, expression grim, which means she's already adjusting. Ron muttered, Brilliant. We're fighting someone who can smell thoughts. Hermione ignored him. Now, next step is the hard one. Harry's stomach tightened. Serious. Hermione nodded once. Yes. Ron looked like he just swallowed a rock. He's gonna explode. Harry picked up the mirror shard again, thumb brushing the rune. It was warm, like it held a heartbeat that wasn't his. Then we don't tell him in a way that lets him explode, Harry said quietly. Hermione's eyes narrowed. Meaning, Harry said, voice steadier than he felt. We don't give him a target to hit. We get him a job. They found Remus in a library, where Grimmauld Place kept its nastiest silence. Dust hung like a spell. Books watched from shelves like suspicious old men. Remus listened as Hermione explained the mirror and the dossier with that same calm concentration he'd had in the hallway earlier. Like panic was something he kept in a box and only opened when necessary. When Hermione finished, Remus's gaze settled on Harry. You did well, he said, and it didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a fact. Harry's throat tightened. What happens now? Remus sighed, slow. Now we control the channel. Harry's scar pulsed faintly, as if something in the house shifted. Remus's eyes flicked to the door. Sirius is with Kingsley. Harry's stomach dropped. Dumbledore. Remus nodded once. Dumbledore came in person. That hit Harry like a punch. Dumbledore in the house, close enough to breathe the same dusty air, and Harry hadn't known. Remus saw his expression and softened slightly. He wanted Sirius private. No audience. No Molly. Harry swallowed, and Remus's gaze went distant, and Sirius didn't take it well. Ron groaned. Told you. Remus's mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost not. Sirius shouted. Dumbledore listened. Then Dumbledore did something very rare. Harry leaned forward. He told Sirius the truth, Remus said quietly. Not softened, not polite. Harry's heart thudded. Remus continued. He told Sirius Creature is not just a nuisance. Creature is a weapon aimed at the Order. And Sirius, whether he likes it or not, is the hand that could disarm it. Harry's throat tightened, so Sirius has to order him. Yes, Remus said. Hermione's eyes were sharp, with no loopholes. Remus nodded. Exactly. Ron muttered, someone should tattoo no loopholes on Sirius's forehead. Remus ignored him. Harry, Albus asked me to start your clemency properly. Harry's stomach dropped anyway. Even without Snape, the word felt like a trap. Remus's voice was steady. Not today with wands and violence. Just groundwork. Harry swallowed. All right. Remus gestured to an armchair near the cold hearth. Seat. Harry sat. The silence in the library pressed close, heavy and watching. Remus spoke gently. "Close your eyes." Harry did. "Now," Remus said, "think of your mind as a house." Harry's scar pulsed faintly. Remus continued, "Not a door, not a blank space. A house. There are rooms you want people in and rooms you don't." Harry's breathing slowed. "Picture a room that is yours alone," Remus said. "A place you can recognize instantly. Choose something simple." Harry thought of the Gryffindor common room, the fire, the worn armchairs, the feeling of belonging that never fully lasted but still mattered. "I see it," Harry murmured. "Good," Remus said. "Now place something in it. An anchor, something you can touch in your mind that reminds you who you are." Harry's throat tightened. He thought of his mother's letter, Lily's handwriting, the one Mrs. Weasley had kept. He thought of the way it made him feel like he existed outside Voldemort's story. In his mind, he placed the letter on a table near the fire. "It's there," Harry whispered. "Now," Remus said, "imagine a hallway outside the room." Harry pictured the corridor leading away. "Sometimes," Remus said softly, "you will feel pounding on the walls. A presence pressing. Don't open your door. Don't run into the hall. You stand in your room, touch your anchor, and you ask one question." Harry's breathing was steady now. "What question?" Remus's voice dropped. "Who was knocking?" Harry swallowed. He felt it then. Not a vision, not a scar attack. Just pressure, like someone far away had leaned their weight against the edge of his thoughts. Harry's scar prickled. A whisper brushed his mind, too faint to be words. Harry didn't move. He touched the letter in his mind, felt the paper, felt the ink, and he asked, silently, "Who is knocking?" The pressure wavered. Like it hadn't expected resistance that felt calm. Harry's scar throbbed once, then eased. Remus exhaled slowly. "That," he said, "is the beginning." Harry opened his eyes, breath shaky but controlled. Hermione looked at him like she'd just seen a spell happen without a wand. Ron looked pale. That was creepy. Harry swallowed. "It worked." Remus nodded. "It will not always feel like that," he warned. "Sometimes it will be worse. Sometimes you will fail. That's not weakness. That's learning." Harry's fingers tightened around the mirror shard in his pocket. Remus stood. "Gulme, we need to see Sirius." Sirius was in the drawing room. Not the kitchen, not the hallway. Here, beneath the black tapestry like the house wanted him to feel the weight of his bloodline. Kingsley stood near the fireplace like a guard who didn't need to announce himself. Dumbledore was there too, tall and calm in the dim light, his presence making the room feel less rotten somehow, like his very existence was a ward. Sirius paced. He looked like a dog trapped in a cage too small, every step charged with violent energy. His eyes flicked to Harry the second he entered, and something protective flashed across his face. "Harry," Sirius said sharply. "You all right?" Harry nodded, throat tight. Sirius's gaze snapped to Dumbledore. "This is ridiculous. Ridiculous. We're talking about an elf. An elf that," Sirius's voice rose, jagged, "that has been poisoning this house for years." Dumbledore didn't flinch. "Yes." Sirius stopped pacing like he'd hit a wall. "Yes. Yes," Dumbledore said calmly. "Creature has been poisoning this house. And now, Sirius, he is poisoning our war." Sirius's jaw clenched. "So we punish him." Kingsley's voice was steady. "Punishment won't stop a channel. It'll make it desperate." Sirius's eyes flashed. He betrayed. He obeyed what he believed his loyalty demanded. Dumbledore interrupted gently, and the gentleness somehow made it sharper, which is why you must use the only thing that overrides belief. Sirius glared. "And what's that?" Dumbledore's eyes held his. A clear order. Sirius's hands curled into fists. "Fine. I'll order him to stop." "No," Dumbledore said, voice firm now. "You will order him precisely." Sirius looked like he wanted to throw something. For Merlin's sake. Dumbledore raised a hand. Sirius. The room quieted. Dumbledore's gaze was calm, but unmovable. If you tell Creature, stop talking to them, he will decide what talking means. If you say, don't betray us, he will decide what betrayal is. If you shout, you will give him exactly what he wants, a reason to twist. Sirius's breath came hard. So what? I'm supposed to ask politely? Dumbledore's eyes softened, but his voice stayed steady. You are supposed to command like a man who understands the consequences of his words. Sirius stared at him for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged just slightly, as if the fight drained out of him and left only exhaustion. All right, Sirius said, voice rough. Tell me what to say. Hermione's hand shot up automatically, like she was in class. I wrote some phrasing. Ron elbowed her, hissing Hermione. But Dumbledore's eyes flicked to her, and for a second, his expression warmed. Excellent, Dumbledore said. Miss Granger, you may read. Hermione stepped forward, parchment in hand, voice firm. Creature will be ordered. 1. You will not contact Narcissa Malfoy, Bellatrix Lestrange, or any Death Eater directly or indirectly without first reporting your intent and exact message to Kingsley Shacklebolt. 2. 3. You will not use the fireplace in the drawing room unless Kingsley Shacklebolt is present and gives you permission. 4. 5. If you do contact Narcissa Malfoy, you will repeat exactly the words given to you by Kingsley Shacklebolt, with no additions or omissions. 6. 7. You will answer truthfully any question asked by Kingsley Shacklebolt about your actions, your contacts, and your intentions. 8. Sirius stared at her like she'd just spoken ancient magic. Dumbledore nodded slowly. That, he said, leaves very little room for mischief. Sirius swallowed, face tight, and we're letting him contact them. Kingsley's voice was calm. We're turning the channel. Sirius looked sick, using my house elf to feed information to my cousin. Dumbledore's voice was quiet. To save your godson. Sirius flinched like the words hit a nerve. Harry's chest tightened. He wanted to say I'm right here. Wanted to say don't make me the reason you do this. But he didn't. He stayed still. Because this was what Bellatrix wanted. Emotion. Scene. Reaction. And Harry was learning to refuse. Sirius inhaled slowly, then nodded once. Call him. Kingsley's voice was low and commanding. Creature. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the elf appeared near the hearth like he'd been hiding inside it. He bowed, deep and trembling. Master called. Sirius's face tightened. Yes, I did. Creature's eyes flicked up, just a fraction, and Harry felt it like a knife. Hate, devotion, cunning. Sirius spoke, voice strained but controlled. He followed Hermione's phrasing almost word for word, stumbling once, then correcting himself. The moment he finished, Creature's body twitched, as if the order tightened around him like chains you couldn't see. Creature's mouth twisted, his hands clenched. Yes, master, he croaked. Dumbledore's gaze stayed fixed on the elf. Creature, he said softly, you will also understand something else. Creature shuddered. Dumbledore's voice was calm, almost kind. You have been loyal to the Black family all your life. It would be unfortunate if your loyalty caused your family's last heir to die. Sirius went rigid. Creature's eyes widened, and for the first time, fear flickered there. Not fear of punishment. Fear of failing what he worshipped. Yes, Creature whispered. Creature understands. Kingsley stepped forward, hand extended. Give me the powder you use. Creature hesitated. His whole body trembled, fighting itself. Then, with a strangled sound, he pulled a small pouch from his ragged clothing and dropped it into Kingsley's palm. Kingsley nodded once. Good. Creature vanished with a pop. Sirius exhaled sharply, like he'd been holding his breath for years. Dumbledore's gaze shifted to Harry. Now, Dumbledore said quietly, we test. That night, the order said a controlled leak. Not about Harry. Not about Sirius. Not about anything that could truly hurt them. It was something plausible enough to bait Bellatrix, something she'd care about, but false enough to be safe. A rumor about an order courier moving a small, enchanted object through a quiet stretch of Diagon Alley, an object linked to the prophecy. Hermione bristled when she heard that. But the prophecy, it's bait, Kingsley told her steady. Bellatrix will want to confirm it. She's obsessed with proving her worth. Harry heard the unspoken part. Bellatrix would want to prove she could still control Harry's story. They stationed Order members on rooftops and in side alleys. Moody arrived like a thundercloud, grumbling about kids and leaks and idiots who think chess is safer than dueling. But his magical eye swept every shadow with deadly seriousness. Harry wasn't allowed to go. That almost broke him. But Dumbledore's mathematics echoed in his head, and Harry forced himself to accept it. He watched from Grimmauld Place instead, sitting in the library with a mirror shard in his hand, waiting for the faint shimmer that meant someone on the other side was there. Hermione sat beside him with her dossier. Ron sat on the floor, knees up, trying to look relaxed and failing. Remus moved quietly through the room like a shadow that had learned gentleness. "Breathe," Remus murmured to Harry. "Anchor." Harry closed his eyes. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? His scar prickled. He didn't open the door. He waited. The pressure faded. Harry opened his eyes again. The mirror shard shimmered. A blurred image resolved. Kingsley's face, faint and distorted, as if seen through water. Harry leaned in. "Is it happening?" he whispered. Kingsley's voice came softly through the mirror, like sound traveling down a long corridor. "Movement," Kingsley said. "Two cloaked figures. Fust, not Aurors." Harry's pulse spiked. "Bellatrix?" "Not confirmed," Kingsley replied. "But the way they're moving, disciplined." Hermione's quill scratched furiously. Ron muttered, "I hate this." Harry swallowed. "What do you need?" Kingsley's eyes flicked up, as if he was scanning the street, even while talking. "Nothing from you. Stay put." Harry's jaw tightened. "Right." The mirror image blurred, then steadied again. Kingsley's voice lowered. "Harry, if you feel anything through the scar, tell me immediately." Harry's scar throbbed faintly, like it heard its name. "Okay," Harry whispered. The image faded. The mirror went dark. Silence filled the library again, thick and waiting. Minutes crawled. Then Harry's scar gave a sharp, sudden sting, hot enough to make his vision blur. Hermione gasped, reaching for him instinctively. Harry's breath hitched, and the world tilted. Not into Voldemort's rage, into Bellatrix's delight. Candlelight. No, streetlight, warped into something golden and cruel. A rooftop. A laugh, soft, controlled, almost musical. Harry saw hands, gloved, trace a rune in the air. And then a whisper slid through his mind like silk. "Good boy." Harry's blood turned to ice. He clutched the mirror shard, forcing his mind back into the room. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? The pressure didn't fade. It pressed harder, testing. Harry's scar burned. Hermione's voice was urgent. "Harry, use the mirror now." Harry lifted the shard, hands shaking, and stared into it. The surface shimmered. Kingsley's face appeared, more sharply now. Wind tugging at his cloak, his eyes narrowed. "Harry," Kingsley said. Harry's voice came out hoarse. "She's there." Kingsley went still. "You're sure?" Harry swallowed hard. "I felt her," she said, his throat tightened. She said, "Good boy." For a fraction of a second, Kingsley's calm cracked, just a flicker of disgust. "Understood," Kingsley said. "Stay anchored. Do not chase." Harry nodded, even though Kingsley couldn't see the motion clearly. Kingsley's voice was clipped now, professional. Moody suspects a third presence. They're trying to draw our watchers. Harry, listen to me. Whatever you see next, you verify before moving. Harry's scar pulsed again like laughter with no sound. And then the vision hit full force. Harry saw Diagon Alley from above, like a bird. He saw an order member in a hooded cloak step into a narrow side street. And in the shadows, a woman's silhouette, tall, elegant, hair like a storm, waiting like she'd been there forever. Bellatrix turned her head, not toward the order member, toward Harry. She lifted a finger to her lips in a silent, shushing gesture. Then she pointed down the alley toward a second figure, stumbling, falling. A man with dark hair. A familiar, reckless posture. Sirius. Harry's heart slammed into his ribs, so hard it hurt. The vision sharpened, cruelly clear. Sirius looked up, eyes wide with alarm, as if he'd heard Harry's name spoken. And Bellatrix's whisper curled through Harry's skull like smoke. Choose. Harry lurched forward, half rising from his chair. Hermione grabbed his shoulder. Harry. Remus's hand closed around Harry's wrist, steady as iron. Anchor. Harry's breathing turned ragged. His mind screamed Sirius. Sirius is there. But Kingsley's voice snapped through the mirror, loud enough to cut. Harry, confirm. Harry stared at the mirror shard, trembling. The surface shimmered. Kingsley's face was tight, focused. Harry, Kingsley said again, slower now, forcing calm into each word. Sirius is not in Diagon Alley. Sirius is with Dumbledore. He hasn't left the house. Harry's breath hitched. The vision flickered. Bellatrix's smile wavered, just a fraction, like a painting disturbed by wind. Harry's scar burned, then cooled. Sirius, in the vision, blurred, lost definition, like a lie collapsing when exposed to light. Bellatrix's whisper sharpened, suddenly annoyed. Clever little thing. Harry's whole body shook. He sank back into the chair, panting, hands clenched so tight his knuckles hurt. Hermione's grip on his shoulder tightened like she was holding him to the world. Remus's voice was low and steady. You did it, he murmured. You didn't move. Harry swallowed hard. She made it look real, Hermione finished, voice shaking with fury. That's the point. Ron's face was white. She's playing with us. Harry stared at the mirror shard, his scar throbbing faintly like a bruise. Kingsley's voice came softly again, controlled. Harry, the leak worked. She bit, but she also tested you. That means two things. Harry swallowed. What? Kingsley's eyes were hard. 1, she's close. 2, she cares about your choices more than the bait. Harry felt cold spread through his chest. Bellatrix wasn't just hunting the order. She was hunting Harry's reflexes. Kingsley's voice lowered. We'll pull back. We'll regroup. You did what you were supposed to do. Harry nodded numbly. The mirror went dark. Silence filled the library again. Hermione's quill scratched as she added a new line to the dossier with an angry, stabbing motion. New confirmed move. Fabricated vision of Sirius forced choice, provoke pursuit. Counter. Mirror verification prevents bait. Harry stared at the words. Then, slowly, he closed his eyes again. Common room. Fire. Letter. And this time, when he asked who was knocking, he felt something else, faint, distant, amused. Not Voldemort's presence. Bellatrix's. Not pressing now. Just listening. Like she was leaning back in her chair, pleased that the game had finally become interesting. For the next 3 days, Harry lived in 2 wars. One was the obvious one, order meetings, hushed voices, Moody's constant stomping, the way Kingsley's calm started to feel like a wall built around the whole house. The other war was quieter. It happened inside his skull. Because once Bellatrix had pressed a finger against the glass of his mind and felt it press back. She didn't stop tapping. It wasn't always pain. Sometimes it was just a nudge, a faint prickle of the scar while Harry was eating or walking or sitting in the library pretending to read while Hermione's quill scratched away at the dossier like it owed her money. Sometimes it was a whisper at the edge of thought. Not words. A mood. Amusement. Curiosity. Irritation. Like Bellatrix Lestrange had taken a seat somewhere far away and decided Harry was her newest hobby. Harry hated how much that thought made him want to move. And that was the point. Again, Remus said. Harry sat in the library armchair, eyes closed, breathing slow through his nose. His hands were flat on his thighs, fingers spread like he was grounding himself to the fabric, to the world, to reality. Remus stood behind him, wand lowered, not threatening, not like Snape had done it. Remus didn't use fear as a teaching tool. He used structure. Build the room, Remus said quietly. Start with the fire. Harry pictured it. The Gryffindor common room, warm and worn, the crackle of flame, the sense that if he leaned back far enough someone would toss him a chocolate frog and call him an idiot affectionately. On the table by the fire, he placed his anchor again, Lily's letter, neat handwriting that made him feel like he existed outside Voldemort's story. I'm there, Harry murmured. Good, Remus said. Now the hallway. Harry pictured the corridor outside the common room. He made it simple, stone walls, torches, straight lines. No twists, no shadows to hide in. Now, Remus said, and Harry heard the shift in his voice, tiny but real. I'm going to knock. Harry's scar prickled instantly, like a reflex. Not pain, pressure. A thought pressed against the hallway. Harry's heart jumped, and every instinct screamed, open the door, see what it is, fight it. He didn't. He stayed in his room. He touched the letter in his mind. And he asked the question, who is knocking? The pressure wavered. Remus's voice came again, calm as a hand on the shoulder. Do you feel how it tries to make you move? Yes, Harry breathed. Good, Remus said. Now decide. Do you open the door? Harry swallowed. No. The pressure eased, not because it was defeated, but because the knock had been answered the only way it feared. With control. Harry opened his eyes. Sweat clung to his palms. His scar throbbed faintly like a bruise. Remus looked tired too, though he tried not to show it. Teaching this wasn't like teaching someone to cast a shield charm. This was like holding a door shut while someone tested every hinge. That was me, Remus said, very gently. If you can learn to hold against gentle knocks, you can learn to resist worse ones. Harry's mouth was dry, and if the knock is her, Remus didn't pretend. Then the hallway will feel different. Harry's chest tightened. Ow! Remus exhaled slowly. Hungry. Harry stared down at his hands. Hungry. That matched the way Bellatrix's voice had sounded inside his head when she said choose. Remus crouched beside the chair, so he was level with Harry. Harry, listen to me. You will not win by being stronger than Bellatrix. Not like this. Harry nodded, jaw tight. You win by refusing to give her what she's asking for, Remus said softly. Reaction. Motion. A sprint toward the trap. Harry's scar gave a faint pulse, like it didn't like the word refusing. Remus straightened. Now, next part. Hermione looked up from her notes instantly. Ron groaned like he already hated whatever was coming. Remus's eyes were steady. We practice compartmentalizing. Harry blinked. That's what? Putting memories where they belong, Remus said. Not burying them, not denying them, placing them in a room and locking it until you choose to open it. Harry's throat tightened. Like, Cedric. Hermione's quill stilled. Ron shifted uncomfortably. Remus didn't flinch. Yes, like Cedric. Harry swallowed hard. The name still felt like a stone in his chest. Heavy, cold, something he carried even when he didn't want to. Pick the room, Remus said. Harry closed his eyes again, built the hallway, built the common room. Then, carefully, he built another room off the corridor, smaller, darker, but not rotten. A room for grief. He placed Cedric there, not his body, Not the horror, but the memory of Cedric's face when he'd offered Harry the Triwizard Cup like it was nothing. A good person, a normal person, dead because Harry had lived. Harry's breath hitched. He wanted to slam the door. He didn't. He placed the memory on a shelf like something sacred, not something shameful. Then he closed the door. He locked it, and he walked back to the common room. When Harry opened his eyes, his lashes were wet. He hated that. He hated that Bellatrix would love it if she knew. Hermione didn't speak. She just slid her mug toward him, silent. Ron cleared his throat awkwardly, then muttered, "That's mental." Remus's mouth twitched slightly. "Yes." Harry wiped his face quickly with the back of his sleeve. "So, if she tries to use it—" "You already put it somewhere," Remus said. "She can knock on that door. She can rattle it. But you know where it is. You decide when it opens." Harry stared at the floor. For the first time since the scar vision started, he felt something that wasn't fear. It was space. A few inches of room inside his own head. And space meant choices. Real choices. Not the ones Bellatrix offered. That night, the Order tested the channel again. Harry wasn't allowed in the drawing room. Dumbledore's rule said gently, but with the finality of stone, but he could hear the voices through the floorboards if he stayed on the stair landing. He did. He sat 2 steps above the landing, cloak bunched beside him like a comfort he didn't deserve. The mirror shard rested in his palm, warm against his skin. Hermione sat behind him with her dossier, quill poised. Ron hovered like a guard dog, muttering threats at shadows. Below, Kingsley's voice was calm and commanding. "Creature." A pop. Then the rasping, resentful breath of the elf. Master called, Creature croaked. Kingsley called, Kingsley corrected, and Harry could hear the iron in his politeness. "You would do exactly as you were told." A pause. "Yes," Creature whispered, strained. Harry heard the soft hiss of powder on flame. Blue fire this time, controlled. Not Creature's sickly green. Kingsley leaned in, voice measured. "Narcissa Malfoy." The flames shifted. Harry didn't see her face from the stairs, but he heard her voice, tight and sharp, like a woman who smiled with her teeth. "Kingsley Shacklebolt," Narcissa said. "How unexpected." Kingsley didn't play games. "We know you've been in contact with this house through Creature." A short silence. Then Narcissa's laugh, small and brittle. "House elves wander. They wander where they're sent," Kingsley replied. Another pause. And then, softly, like silk sliding over bone, Bellatrix's voice entered the fire. "How disciplined," Bellatrix purred. "He's learned to hold a leash." Harry's scar prickled instantly. Hermione's hand tightened on Harry's shoulder behind him. Ron went rigid. Kingsley's voice stayed even. "Bellatrix." "Oh, don't sound so tired," Bellatrix said, amused. "We're all playing the same game." Kingsley replied, steady and controlled. "Creature will deliver a message. He will say it once. You will listen." Bellatrix made a delighted little sound. "Of course." Creature's voice came, strained, like the words hurt to say. "An order courier will pass through Nocturne Alley at midnight on Friday. He will carry a box sealed with runes. The box is linked to prophecy." Hermione's quill scratched upstairs, furious, precise. Bellatrix laughed softly. "A courier," she mused. "A box. A prophecy. How nostalgic." Kingsley didn't respond. The silence was deliberate. No room for Bellatrix to pull conversation into her theater. Bellatrix, however, didn't need conversation. She needed pressure. "Tell me," Bellatrix said lightly, "how is my sweet nephew?" Harry's scar flared. Sirius, somewhere below, made a low sound like a growl. Kingsley cut in fast, voice calm but warning. "Bellatrix, this is not a discussion." "Oh, I wasn't asking you," Bellatrix said, voice syrupy. "I was asking the boy." Harry's blood went cold. He could feel it, like her attention had turned, searching along the channel, sniffing for him. Bellatrix's tone softened, almost fond. Hello, Harry. Harry's entire body locked. Hermione's hand clamped his shoulder harder. Ron's breath came sharp. Kingsley snapped, controlled. Creature. In the call. Creature's breath hitched like he was choking. Yes. Bellatrix's voice sharpened suddenly, like a smile cracking. No. The air felt tighter, even up on the stairs, like a spell had stretched through the house. Harry, Bellatrix whispered, and this time it wasn't playful. It was intimate, targeted. Tell me, did you like my little lesson in Diagon Alley? Harry's scar burned so sharply his vision flashed white. Instinct screamed at him to run down the stairs, to throw himself at the fireplace, to do something. He didn't. He closed his eyes. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? The pressure pressed harder. Hungry. Bellatrix's laugh slid along the edge of his mind like a knife testing skin. Oh, she purred, amused again. He's learning. Harry's breath shook. He touched the letter in his mind. Grounded. Anchored. He didn't answer. Below, Kingsley's voice hit like a hammer. Creature. Now. Creature croaked. Yes, and there was a pop. A snap of displaced air. The flames died. Silence felt like a slap. Harry opened his eyes, panting. Hermione's face was pale with fury. Ron looked like he wanted to punch the wall until apologized. From below came Sirius's voice, raw and shaking with restrained violence. She spoke to him. Dumbledore's voice answered, calm, firm. She attempted to. Sirius snapped. Attempted? Albus? She knocked. Dumbledore said, and his voice carried up the stairs like it was meant for Harry too. And he did not open the door. Harry swallowed hard. His scar throbbed faintly, annoyed almost. Hermione exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for a year. You did it, she whispered. Harry didn't feel victorious. He felt tired and colder than he wanted to be. Because Bellatrix wasn't frustrated. She sounded delighted. Like every layer of resistance made the game richer. The next morning, Remus found Harry at the kitchen table with a cup of tea he hadn't touched. Harry stared at the surface like it might show him visions instead of reflection. Remus sat opposite him, quiet. How many hours did you sleep? Harry blinked. 2. Remus sighed softly. You can't hold the door shut if you don't eat or rest. Harry's jaw tightened. Tell my scar that. Remus's expression softened with something like sympathy. Scars don't listen. We do. Harry's fingers curled around the mug, warmth seeping into cold hands. Remus hesitated, then said, She spoke your name. Harry nodded once, throat tight. Remus's voice dropped. That means she's escalating. She will stop knocking politely. Harry swallowed. What does that look like? Harry asked. Remus's gaze went distant. Gifts, he said quietly. Messages. Triggers. Anything designed to make you move without thinking. Harry's scar pulsed faintly, like the word gifts pleased it. Hermione slid into the seat beside Harry with her dossier. She flipped to a new page and wrote in hard strokes. Bellatrix escalation. Direct address through channel. Intent. Provoke response. Test the clemency structure. Next likely move. Gift/object/message with emotional hook. Ron dropped into the chair across from Hermione, grimacing. Can she just not exist? Hermione didn't look up. No. Harry stared at the table. Something in him didn't want to admit it, but Remus and Hermione were right. Bellatrix wasn't going to keep tapping glass. She was going to try to put her hand inside the house. It happened that evening. Harry was in his room, practicing the hallway again, building it, walking it, placing doors when the air behind him shifted. A soft pop. Hottie spoon. Creature stood near the door, hunched and trembling. His eyes were bright with something ugly and reverent. Harry's scar prickled instantly. Creature, Harry said, voice flat. Creature's mouth twisted. Master's boy, he rasped, and there was venom in the affection. Harry's hand slid toward his wand. Creature's gaze flicked to it, then away, as if it bored him. He held something in his hands, a sealed envelope, thick parchment, edges blackened like it had been kissed by fire. A wax seal stamped with a familiar crest, an ornate beak curled like a serpent. Black. Harry's stomach dropped. Creature extended it with both hands like an offering at an altar. A gift, Creature whispered, for the boy. Harry's scar gave a sharp, excited sting. Harry didn't move. Kingsley said, Harry began. Creature's lips peeled back, showing yellowed teeth in something that wasn't quite a smile. Kingsley said Creature cannot contact Mistress. Creature croaked. Creature did not contact Mistress. Mistress contacted Creature. Harry's blood went cold. Loophole. Of course. Creature's eyes gleamed. Creature only delivers. Like post. Like servant. Harry stared at the envelope like it might be a portkey. Like it might be cursed. Like it might whisper, choose the moment he touched it. His fingers twitched. Not from curiosity. From the old reflex to act. To tear it open. To find out what she knew, what she wanted, what trap she'd built. The scar pulsed, hungry, encouraging. Hermione's voice echoed in his head. Verify before moving. Remus's voice followed. Who is knocking? Harry forced his hand away from the envelope. Slowly, carefully, he reached into his pocket. He pulled out the mirror shard. Creature's eyes narrowed, suspicious. Harry lifted the shard, staring into it until the surface shimmered. A blurred face appeared. Kingsley. Harry's voice came out low and tight. She sent a letter. Kingsley's eyes sharpened instantly. Do not touch it. Harry swallowed. Creature says she contacted him, so it isn't breaking the order. Kingsley's jaw clenched. It will break soon. Harry's scar throbbed, like laughter behind teeth. Creature's voice hissed, eager. Open it, he whispered. Mistress writes pretty words. Mistress knows secrets. Mistress knows. Harry snapped, shut up. Creature flinched, then smiled wider, because anger was a reaction too. Kingsley's voice cut through the mirror, calm but hard. Harry, leave the room. Now, get Remus. Do not be alone with Creature. Harry's breathing shook. He looked at Creature. He looked at the envelope. The wax seal seemed to gleam even in the dim light, like it enjoyed being stared at. And then, so softly Harry almost thought he imagined it, the envelope shifted. Not moved by wind. Moved like something inside it had exhaled. Harry's scar burned. A whisper brushed the back of his mind, intimate as breath. Good boy, now choose. Harry backed away, mirror shard clutched tight, eyes locked on the letter like it was a snake coiled to strike. He opened his door without taking his eyes off Creature. And ran. Harry didn't stop running until his lungs burned. He tore down the corridor, past the peeling wallpaper and the crooked portrait that hissed insults at his back, past a door that rattled like something inside it wanted out, straight into the library. Remus looked up instantly, like he'd been expecting the house to spit Harry back out at any moment. What is it? Remus asked, already on his feet. Harry didn't bother trying to sound calm. Creature. In my room. He brought. Harry swallowed, throat tight, a letter from her. Remus's expression didn't change much, but the air around him did. The quiet drained out of the room like someone had pulled a plug. Hermione snapped her dossier shut. Ron stood so fast his chair scraped. Remus didn't ask questions yet. He just said, mirror. Harry yanked the shard out, hands shaking, and stared until it shimmered. Kingsley's face appeared, blurred but sharp enough to see his eyes narrow the moment he recognized Harry's panic. Harry, Kingsley said, calm as stone. Report. Creature delivered an envelope to my room, Harry said, voice hoarse. Black seal. He says Bellatrix contacted him, so it doesn't break the order. Kingsley's jaw tightened. Understood. Do not touch it. Do not be alone. I'm coming. The mirror went dark. Remus was already moving. Cloak, he ordered gently. Harry grabbed it without thinking. Hermione and Ron fell in behind them, and the four of them moved through Grimmauld Place like they were walking through a minefield. The hallway outside Harry's bedroom felt colder than it should. The door was closed, but Harry could feel the problem inside it, like a cursed object had its own gravity. Remus raised a hand. Wait! Harry held still. Hermione and Ron froze behind him. Remus flicked his wand. The lock clicked softly. The door creaked open an inch, just enough for Remus to peer through. Then Remus's eyes hardened. Creature, he said, voice low. Step away from the boy's desk. A rasping sound came from inside. A movement like cloth dragged across wood. Remus pushed the door open fully. Harry's room looked normal in the way a trap tries to look normal. Moonlight slanted through the curtains. His bed sat rumpled. His desk waited in the corner. And sitting in the center of the desk, like a jewel placed for admiration, was the envelope. Thick parchment, edges blackened, wax seal stamped with a black crest, an ornate bee that looked less like a letter and more like something with fangs. Creature stood beside it, hunched and trembling with reverence. His eyes gleamed when Harry entered. Master's boy returned. Creature croaked, and it sounded like a prayer and an insult at the same time. Harry didn't look at Creature for long. He couldn't. The envelope pulled his attention the way pain pulled attention, like it wanted to be touched. His scar prickled, hungry. Remus stepped forward, wand up, but not aggressive, as if he knew aggression was exactly what Creature would twist. Creature, Remus said evenly. Who gave you that? Creature's lips peeled back. Mistress did. Hermione's voice was sharp. Ow! Creature's eyes flicked to her, contemptuous. Creature was called. Harry's stomach dropped. Called by who? Creature's breath hitched, like a laugh that didn't quite escape. Mistress. Mistress knows the old ways. Mistress knows the house. A cold realization slid through Harry's ribs. Bellatrix didn't just have a channel. She had access. Not physically, not yet, but through the Black family's old magic, and through a servant who worshipped her name like it was holy. Remus didn't react out loud. He simply nodded, as if he'd been expecting something like that. And you accepted it, Remus said. Creature obeys blood. Creature whispered, eyes shining. Creature obeys family. Harry's scar pulsed sharply, like it liked that word, family. Harry clenched his fists until his nails hurt. Then he forced them open. He wasn't giving Bellatrix reaction. Not here. Not now. A knock sounded from downstairs, firm, controlled, and footsteps climbed the stairs with the calm weight of authority. Kingsley arrived like a wall, made human. Behind him came Moody, clomping and grumbling, magical eye whirring as it scanned the corridor, the ceiling, the floor, and probably the thoughts in the wallpaper. Tonks trailed after, hair mousy brown for once, face tight. Kingsley took in the scene in one glance. The envelope. Creature. Harry. Kingsley's voice was quiet. Creature. Stand in the corner. Hands visible. Creature trembled, like the order hurt him, but he shuffled away, pressing himself against the far wall, eyes fixed on the envelope like it was a candle he didn't want to lose. Moody's magical eye spun and stopped on the seal. Lovely, Moody growled. A gift, because that always goes well. Kingsley held out a hand, palm open. Harry, step back. Harry stepped back, pulling Hermione and Ron with him like he didn't trust the air between them and the desk. Kingsley flicked his wand once. A thin, transparent dome formed over the envelope, so clear it looked like the envelope was trapped in glass. Moody grunted. Containment. Good. Tonks glanced at Harry. You didn't touch it? Harry swallowed. No. Something relieved flickered across Tonks's face. Good. Moody's eye clicked and rotated. He didn't touch it, Moody said, almost grudging. Smart. Harry almost laughed at the word smart. It felt like being praised for not stepping into a fire. Kingsley turned to Creature. "Creature," Kingsley said, voice very controlled. "You will explain precisely what happened." Creature's mouth twisted. Creature was in the kitchen. Creature heard, he shuddered. Mistress's voice. Mistress called Creature to the drawing room. Creature went. Mistress told Creature to deliver a letter to the boy. Creature delivered. Kingsley's eyes narrowed. "Did you speak to her?" "No," Creature hissed, and the word held the light. Creature only listened. Creature only obeyed. Moody spat, disgusted. "Loophole." Hermione's voice was tight. "We need to fix the order." Kingsley nodded once. "We will." A soft sound came from the hallway, footsteps that somehow made the house feel quieter. Dumbledore appeared at the doorway, like he'd stepped out of the shadows themselves. His eyes took in the room, and for a moment, Harry saw something in them that wasn't calm. It was calculation. Dumbledore moved inside, wand already in hand. "Good evening," he said mildly, like he hadn't walked into a nest of venom. Harry's throat tightened. "Professor." Dumbledore's gaze flicked to Harry, and the warmth returned, faint but real. "You did well not to open it." Then his eyes settled on the envelope. A Dumbledore murmure. "She is becoming impatient." Moody's magical I word. Or confident. Dumbledore's mouth curved slightly. Often the same thing. Dumbledore stepped toward the desk, stopping just outside Kingsley's containment dome. He did not touch it. He simply raised his wand and whispered a series of spells so soft Harry barely caught the edges of them. The air shimmered. The envelope didn't. And that was the problem. Moody growled. "It's shielded." "It is," Dumbledore agreed. His voice was calm, but his eyes sharpened. Not against destruction, against identification. Hermione leaned forward, voice urgent. "So you can't tell what it does?" "Oh, I can tell what it wants," Dumbledore said quietly. Harry swallowed. "What?" Dumbledore looked at Harry, and his voice turned gentle without losing its edge. "It wants you alone," Dumbledore said. "It wants you curious. It wants you to make the same mistake you have made before, believing that knowing faster means acting faster." Harry's scar gave a faint sting, offended. Ron muttered, "She's obsessed." Dumbledore's eyes flicked to the wax seal again. "Yes," he said, "an obsession is a form of discipline when it is fed properly." Kingsley's jaw tightened. "We need to open it." Hermione tensed. Not with Harry here." Dumbledore nodded. "Correct." Harry's chest tightened anyway. "It's for me." "And that is exactly why you will not be the one to open it," Dumbledore replied, firm. Moody snorted. "Finally, some sense." Harry swallowed hard and forced himself to nod. Dumbledore turned to Kingsley. "Increase the containment. If it is what I suspect, it will attempt to establish a connection the moment the seal is broken." Kingsley raised his wand and expanded the dome. It thickened, the air inside it rippling like heat above stone. Dumbledore glanced at Creature again. "Creature," Dumbledore said softly, and the elf shuddered like the name itself hurt. "Your orders must be amended." Sirius's voice came from the hallway like a thrown knife. "Amended how?" Harry's heart slammed. Sirius pushed into the room. His eyes landed on the envelope instantly, and his whole body went rigid, like a dog seeing a trap and wanting to bite it anyway. "What is that?" Sirius asked, voice raw. Hermione started, "Sirius." Harry stepped forward before Hermione could, before Remus could. Because Dumbledore had said it, and Harry finally understood. This was Harry's choice, not Bellatrix's. Harry met Sirius's eyes. "It's for Bellatrix," Harry said. Sirius's face twisted. His gaze snapped to Creature. "You?" Creature flinched, then smiled with poison in his eyes. Sirius's hand flew toward his wand. "No," Harry snapped. The word came out sharper than he meant. It landed like a slap. Sirius froze. Harry swallowed, forcing his voice steadier. That's what she wants. Sirius's jaw clenched. Harry, she sent something into my house. Harry felt the old fear rise. Fear of Sirius's temper. Fear of losing him to pride. He crushed it. She called Creature, Harry said, voice low, controlled. She didn't need him to contact her. She used a loophole. Sirius's eyes went flint hard. I'll tear that elf in half. Dumbledore's voice was calm, precise. And Creature would vanish to her side the moment you did. Sirius's chest heaved. Harry's scar prickled as if it enjoyed the heat of the room. Harry looked at the envelope again, then back at Sirius. And he made the choice he'd been avoiding since the first vision. He chose Sirius's life over Sirius's pride. She used you, Harry said quietly. Sirius's face went still. Harry pushed on, because if he hesitated, he'd soften, and softening would make the truth easier to ignore. She made me see you in Diagon Alley, in my scar, like you were about to die. She told me to choose. Sirius's eyes widened, shock flashing for the first time. Kingsley's voice came like a steady anchor. It was a false lure. Harry verified through the mirror. Sirius never left this house. Sirius stared at Harry, something wounded and furious in his expression. She used me as bait. Harry nodded once. Yes. Silence hit the room like a heavy cloak. Sirius's hands curled into fists. His breathing came harsh, and for a second Harry saw it. The urge to explode, to storm out, to do something reckless just to prove he wasn't a puppet. Harry stepped closer, voice low. I'm not losing you, Harry said. Sirius blinked, thrown. Harry didn't look away. Not because she's clever. Not because you're angry. Not because you need to prove something. Sirius's jaw trembled. Harry, you taught me family isn't just blood, Harry said, and his voice cracked just a little, and he hated that it did, but he didn't stop. So act like it. Stay alive. Sirius stared at him. Then his shoulders sagged, just a fraction, like the fight drained out and left exhaustion underneath. He looked at the envelope again, with hatred so clean it was almost cold. What does it do? Sirius asked. Dumbledore answered, we will find out. Moody grunted, under a mountain of wards. Dumbledore nodded once. Precisely. He turned to Creature, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentle in the way a blade can be gentle. Creature, Dumbledore said, your new orders will be as follows. Creature trembled, the reverence battling the binding magic. Dumbledore spoke slowly, each word like a nail hammered into place. You will not accept any object, message, instruction, or gift for Narcissa Malfoy, Bellatrix Lestrange, or any Death Eater, whether they contact you or you contact them. Creature's face twisted in pain. If any of them attempt to contact you, Dumbledore continued, you will report immediately to Kingsley Shacklebolt and to your master, Sirius Black, with the exact words you heard. You will not delay. You will not omit. You will not add. Creature shook violently, like the order was choking him. And Dumbledore finished, eyes hard behind his spectacles, you will not step into the drawing room without Sirius Black's permission. You will not use the fireplace without Kingsley Shacklebolt present. You will not enter Harry Potter's room unless Harry Potter invites you. The last one made Creature flinch like it burned. Yes, Creature croaked, voice strangled. Creature obeys. Sirius swallowed, staring at the elf like he was seeing the chains around him for the first time. Kingsley stepped forward. Now, he said to Dumbledore, the envelope. Dumbledore nodded. He raised his wand. And this time, he didn't whisper. He spoke a spell that sounded old, older than Hogwarts, older than the house itself. The air inside Kingsley's dome thickened like syrup. Then Dumbledore flicked his wand once. The wax seal cracked. The room went cold. Not winter cold, not drafty house cold. A cold that felt like being watched by something that enjoyed your skin. The envelope trembled. Thin black smoke seeped from the crack in the seal, curling upward, and then it spread across the inside of the containment dome like ink spilled on glass. A surface formed, shiny, reflective. A mirror made of shadow. Hermione's breath caught. It's a mirror bridge. Moody swore. I knew it. The shadow mirror shimmered, and suddenly Harry saw something in it. Not his reflection. A corridor. Stone walls. Torches. A doorway at the end. And behind that doorway, Harry Scar screamed. A voice slipped into the room like silk. Hello, darling. Bellatrix's voice didn't come from the mirror. It came from everywhere. Sirius stiffened, eyes burning. Dumbledore's wand snapped up, and the containment dome flared brighter. Bellatrix laughed softly, delighted. Oh, Albus, she purred. How thoughtful. So many adults. Harry felt the pressure in his mind, testing, probing, hungry. He closed his eyes on instinct. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? The pressure pressed harder. Not enough to break him. Enough to let him know she was there. Bellatrix's voice slid again, amused. He's learned to build rooms. How adorable. Harry's nails bit into his palm. He didn't answer. He didn't move. Dumbledore's voice cut through the air, calm and sharp. Bellatrix. Oh yes, she sighed. Say my name like that. It makes me nostalgic. Sirius took a step forward, fury burning through him. You. Harry grabbed Sirius's sleeve. Sirius froze, looking down at Harry. Harry didn't let go. Not because he was afraid of Sirius. Because he was afraid of the choice Bellatrix wanted Sirius to make. Dumbledore flicked his wand again. The shadow mirror rippled violently. Bellatrix hissed, the amusement sharpening into annoyance. Don't be rude, she said softly. I brought a gift. Moody's I word. A trap. Bellatrix chuckled. Naturally. Then the mirror cleared, and words appeared in curling ink. Elegant, beautiful, poisonous. You are doing so well. The words shifted like they were alive. Now prove it. Harry's scar flared hot, demanding. Hermione whispered, voice shaking with rage, compulsion. Bellatrix's voice dropped into a near whisper, intimate as breath. Harry, she murmured, and the way she said his name made his skin crawl. Open the door. The pressure surged. Not pain. Not screaming. A sudden, violent need to obey. Harry's breath hitched. His hand twitched toward the desk, toward the mirror, toward the trap. And then, hard, sharp, real, Harry felt Sirius's fingers close around his wrist. Sirius didn't yank. He didn't shout. He just held on. Solid. Present. Family. And Harry's mind snapped back into the room. Common room. Fire. Letter. Harry touched the letter. Who is knocking? The pressure faltered. For the first time, it didn't feel delighted. It felt irritated. Bellatrix's voice sharpened, just a hairline crack in her control. Oh, she whispered, he's not alone anymore. Dumbledore's wand flashed. The shadow mirror shattered like glass, black shards evaporating into smoke. The envelope crumpled in on itself, parchment curling, seal melting. Bellatrix's laugh faded as if dragged away down a corridor. But before it vanished completely, Harry heard one last whisper, clear and certain. Next time, I won't knock. And then silence slammed into the room. Harry stood frozen, breathing hard, wrists still in Sirius's grip. Sirius looked down at him, and for a second Harry saw something in Sirius's eyes that wasn't fury. It was fear. Not for himself. For Harry. Sirius swallowed. She tried to pull you. Harry nodded, throat tight. Yeah. Sirius's grip tightened once, gentle, not crushing. A promise. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly. His expression was calm again, but his eyes were colder now. She confirmed what we suspected, Dumbledore said quietly. Kingsley's jaw clenched. That she can push through the channel. Moody growled, and she's getting bolder. Hermione's voice came thin. The gift wasn't a letter. Dumbledore nodded. It was a doorway. Harry stared at the desk where the envelope had been. His scar pulsed faintly, like it missed her. He hated that more than anything. And then, faint, shimmering, his mirror shard warmed in his pocket. Harry yanked it out. Kingsley's face appeared instantly, tense. Update, Kingsley snapped. Dumbledore answered before Harry could. She made contact, briefly. The envelope contained a shadow mirror bridge keyed toward Harry. Kingsley's eyes narrowed. Any harm? Harry forced his voice steady. No, I didn't move. Kingsley exhaled once, sharp. Good. Then his gaze flicked upward, as if listening to someone off-screen. And his expression changed. Albus, Kingsley said, voice suddenly urgent. We have a problem. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. Speak. Kingsley's voice dropped. While we were securing the house, an order courier was hit. Harry's stomach dropped. Ambush, Kingsley continued. Not lethal. Clean. Professional. And the attackers left one message carved into the wall. Harry's scar prickled like it recognized the handwriting. Kingsley swallowed. It says, Kingsley reported your house is loud. Silence filled the room again, thick and sickening. Bellatrix hadn't just tried to drag Harry through a mirror. She'd used the chaos to hit elsewhere. A diversion. A demonstration. A warning. Dumbledore's voice went very quiet. Then she's not merely testing, he said. She is advancing. Harry's fingers tightened around the mirror shard. Sirius's hand rested on Harry's shoulder, heavy and real. And deep in Harry's mind, behind the doors and corridors he'd built, something knocked once, soft and confident. Not asking to be let in, just reminding him it could return. Grimmauld Place didn't feel loud. It felt like a coffin that had learned to whisper. But Bellatrix's message, your house is loud, hung over every corridor like smoke, turning every creak into suspicion and every closed door into a question. Harry noticed the change first in the adults. Not in what they said, in what they stopped saying. Order meetings moved from the kitchen to rooms Harry wasn't allowed near. Names vanished from conversations. Even Mrs. Weasley started using phrases like the thing and that place instead of specifics. Moody roamed the halls like a storm cloud with one eye too many, muttering about discipline and compartmentalizing and kids who listened through keyholes, as if Harry hadn't already learned what it cost to listen. Then the house changed. Dumbledore arrived again that evening, quiet as snowfall, and walked Grimmauld Place like he was reading a book written in dust. He laid wards with slow, deliberate wand movements that didn't look like spells so much as architecture, lines in the air that became invisible beams. When he finished, the silence felt thicker, like the walls had learned to swallow sound. Sound muffling wards, Hermione whispered when he left, eyes bright despite the tension. And anti-scrying layers. He's turning the house into a bunker, Ron finished, voice flat. Harry didn't correct either of them. Because the real shift wasn't the wards. It was Dumbledore's strategy. They stopped trying to make the house quiet. They started making the house usefully loud. Kingsley explained it to Remus in the library, and Harry caught enough of it through the door to feel his stomach tighten. If she's convinced she's hearing everything here, Kingsley said calmly, then we let her keep thinking that. And we do everything important somewhere else, Remus replied. Exactly. A controlled leak. A planned narrative. A fake rhythm. Hermione's dossier grew into a small book. She wrote new Bellatrix pattern at the top of a page in aggressive capitals and underlined it 3 times. She tests reactions, not just security. She uses theatrical strikes to hide clean objectives. She isn't hunting information alone. She's hunting predictability. She escalates when denied. She adapts fast. Ron stared at the bullet points like they were an obituary. So basically, he muttered, "She's the worst." Hermione didn't look up. Yes. Harry didn't speak. Because the hardest part of living like a strategist wasn't the planning. It was what it did to your heart. Harry found himself watching Sirius like a guard, watching Hermione and Ron like they were targets, listening for the slightest shift in the air that meant a knock on the hallway of his mind. And worse, he caught himself thinking things he hated. If Bellatrix wants a choice, she'll choose the person I can't ignore, that if she wants me to run, she'll make it look like love. That meant Sirius. That meant Hermione. That meant Neville. If she remembered the prophecy, he had once been able to choose him too. Harry's scar pulsed faintly at the thought, as if it liked that he'd finally said the name. The next morning, Kingsley announced they were going to Diagon Alley. Ron brightened instantly, almost painfully. Finally, Hermione's eyes narrowed. Under guard. Very much under guard, Kingsley agreed. Moody snorted. If you lot wander off, I'll hex your knees backward. Ron grimaced. Lovely. Sirius didn't speak much during breakfast. He was restless, caged, and his eyes kept drifting to the window like it was an insult that the world existed outside. Harry noticed something else too. Sirius was trying. He bit back comments. He didn't snap at Creature, who was now kept at a distance, sulking like a shadow with teeth. He listened when Kingsley spoke. He didn't like it, but he did it. Harry didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified. They moved in pairs. Harry stayed close to Hermione and Ron. Tonks walked with them, bright and casual, but her eyes scanned like a hawk's. Kingsley was calm as ever. Remus drifted slightly behind, presence steady. Moody stomped ahead like a warning sign. They operated in stages, splitting the group the way Kingsley insisted. No single point of failure. The first thing Harry felt when they stepped into Diagon Alley wasn't excitement. It was pressure, not a vision, not pain, just a sense of being watched. Harry touched his pocket automatically, fingers brushing the mirror shard like a talisman. Anchor, Remus's voice echoed in his head. Harry breathed. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? No answer came, only the sensation of eyes that weren't his. The crowd in Diagon Alley moved like a living river. People talked in bursts, laughing too loudly like laughter could chase away fear. Shop windows glittered. Owl cries rang out, and above it all, the sky looked too open, too exposed. They were halfway to Flourish and Blots when Harry saw Neville. He was near the apothecary with his grandmother, Augusta Longbottom, who stood like a general in a hat that could have defeated Voldemort on its own. Neville looked older than last year, still awkward, still gentle, but more solid, like the world had stopped asking him permission before hitting him and he'd started planting his feet. Neville spotted them. His face lit up. Then his eyes met Harry's, and the smile faltered, just a fraction, as if Neville sensed something hard behind Harry's expression. Harry hated that. Hermione waved. Neville hurried over. Harry, Neville said, breathless. Ron. Hermione. Ron grinned. All right, Neville. Neville nodded, then glanced around quickly. Gran says the ministry's acting weird. Like they're expecting something. Augusta nodded to them curtly. Potter. Harry swallowed. Mrs. Longbottom. Her eyes were sharp. You look thin. Harry didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say to that. Tonks slid up beside them, casual as a joke. Morning, Mrs. Longbottom. Augusta's eyes narrowed. Nymphadora. Tonks winced. Right, still doing that. Harry almost smiled. Almost. Then the air changed. A small sound like glass clinking wrong. Harry's scar prickled. Not burning. Warning. His gaze snapped to the apothecary window. A jar inside it had begun to tremble. At first he thought it was the vibration of footsteps. Then the jar tipped by itself. It didn't fall. It hovered, just a moment, as if something invisible had lifted it. Hermione's eyes narrowed. That's not. The jar exploded. Not outward. Inward. A sharp pop, like a bubble bursting. Green smoke poured into the street in a sudden billow. People screamed. Harry's scar flared. Not with pain, but with that sixth sense of direction. This wasn't chaos. It was a curtain. Moody's roar cracked through the street. Move! Tonks shoved civilians aside. Wand up. Kingsley's voice hit like an anchor. Shield line. Now! Remus grabbed Harry's shoulder and pulled him back instinctively, but Harry's eyes weren't on the smoke. They were on the edges. Because Bellatrix never struck the center. She struck the thing people didn't watch because they were busy staring at the flames. Harry saw the second move like a chess piece sliding in the dark. A hooded figure, too smooth, too deliberate, cut through the panic toward Neville. Not toward Harry. Toward Neville. Neville didn't see them. He was coughing, eyes watering, trying to pull his grandmother away from the smoke. Harry's stomach dropped. Domino. Bellatrix wasn't offering Harry Sirius today. She was offering him something else. Neville Longbottom, the other boy the prophecy could have chosen. Harry's scar pulsed with cold delight, as if it approved of the twist. Harry didn't think. He moved, but not into a chase. Into a shield. He stepped between Neville and the hooded figure and threw up a shield charm, so hard the air snapped. Protego! The hooded figure slammed into the invisible wall like they'd hit stone. Neville blinked, startled. Harry, what? Get back! Harry snapped, voice sharp. Stay behind me. Hermione was there instantly, wand up, eyes bright with fury. Stupefied. The hooded figure ducked and flicked a wand non-verbally. No words, no hesitation, and Harry's shield rippled. Adult, Harry thought. Not a student, not a petty thug. The figure lunged again, and Harry felt the difference immediately. This wasn't a duel meant to win. It was a grab, a snatch, a clean objective. Moody's voice boomed somewhere to Harry's left, cutting through the smoke. That one, the hood. But Moody was pinned by civilians and chaos. Kingsley was holding a shield line to keep the crowd from being trampled. Tonks was pulling people to safety. Remus was firing stunners into the smoke, tracking another presence. They were all forced into the loud part of the fight. This, right here, was the quiet part. The real part. Harry's scar prickled again, and for a moment the world blurred at the edges. He caught candlelight that wasn't here. Heard a whisper that wasn't in the air. Choose, Bellatrix's voice breathed in the back of his mind, delighted. Save him, or chase me. Harry's heart slammed. Because he felt it, felt her, somewhere nearby, not in the smoke but above it, watching. Testing. Harry's hand twitched, the old reflex to hunt her, to end her. His scar burned hotter. Neville made a frightened sound behind him. Harry clenched his jaw, so hard his teeth hurt. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? The pressure wavered. Harry stayed where he was. He didn't chase. He didn't even look up. He anchored himself to the simplest truth. Neville is real. Neville is here. Bellatrix is offering a lie shaped like victory. The hooded figure tried again, this time casting something that curled like a rope of shadow, snapping toward Neville's waist. Harry threw himself sideways, cutting it off with a slashing charm he barely knew he could do. Defendo. The rope snapped in half. It evaporated like smoke. Hermione stepped in fast, precise. Incarcerus. Rope shot from her wand and wrapped around the attacker's legs. The hooded figure hissed, furious, and the ropes began to unravel, nonverbal countermagic smooth and practiced. Ron finally charged in from his side like an angry wrecking ball. Expelliarmus. The attacker's wand flew, spinning high, and Harry snatched it out of the air without thinking. The hooded figure froze for half a heartbeat. Then they laughed soft cold. Not Bellatrix's laugh. but close enough to make Harry's stomach turn. The figure yanked their hood down, not to reveal their face. No, they wore a plain silver mask, featureless, almost boring. A professional. They didn't want recognition. They wanted results. The masked Death Eater flicked a hand, and a small object fell from their sleeve, black glass, round as a coin. It hit the ground. Harry's scar screamed. "Don't!" Hermione shouted, but she was too late. The coin shattered. The air folded. Space bent. For one breathless second, Harry saw a doorway open in the street. Dark corridor, torches, the same mirror bridge feeling as the envelope. A portkey without a portkey. A door without a door. Neville stumbled as the pole hit him, like something invisible had grabbed his ribs. Harry lunged, not after the Death Eater. After Neville. He grabbed Neville's arm with both hands and dug his heels into the cobblestones. "Hold on," Harry snarled. Neville's eyes went wide. "I'm trying." The pull intensified. Harry felt his muscles strain, felt the world trying to rip Neville out like a page torn from a book. Hermione grabbed Neville's other arm. Ron grabbed Hermione's waist, anchoring all three of them together. Tonks shouted from the smoke, voice sharp. "Portal! Down!" Kingsley's voice cracked through the chaos like thunder. "Contain!" A golden ring flared around the dark opening. Kingsley's magic precise, heavy. The pull faltered, fighting against the containment like a beast against chains. The masked Death Eater moved, fast as thought, diving for Neville again. Harry raised the stolen wand and fired without hesitation. Stupefy. The red bolt slammed into the masked dead center. The attacker staggered, didn't fall, not fully but enough. Enough for Moody to appear out of the smoke like an executioner. Moody's magical word, locked on a masked figure. "Thought you were clever." Moody snarled, and his wand snapped up. The masked Death Eater didn't try to duel. They did the only thing professionals did when the job failed. They ran. A sharp crack, disapparition, illegal and violent in the middle of the street. The dark doorway shuttered, then snapped shut like it had never existed. Harry stumbled back, breathing hard, hands still locked on Neville's arm. Neville stared at Harry like he'd just seen a different person. "Harry, what? How did you?" Harry couldn't answer, because he felt it again. That amused pressure above the smoke, like eyes on a rooftop. Harry looked up despite himself. For half a heartbeat, he saw her. Not fully, not clearly. Just a silhouette in black against the pale sky. Hair like a storm, posture elegant, still as a knife on a table. Bellatrix Lestrange. She didn't cast. She didn't laugh. She simply lifted her hand and made a small, slow motion, like tipping an invisible chess piece forward. A gesture that said, "Not bad." Then she vanished, not with a crack like the masked Death Eater. With a softness, like she'd never been there at all. Harry's scar pulsed once, faint and pleased. Hermione's voice was tight, furious, shaken. She wanted Neville. Neville's grandmother stepped forward, trembling with rage rather than fear. "Who dares?" Kingsley was suddenly there, gentle but firm, guiding her back. "Mrs. Longbottom, please," inside the apothecary. "Now." Moody stomped over, eye whirring as it scanned Harry and Neville like they might be cursed objects now. "You!" Moody barked at Harry. "You didn't chase." Harry swallowed, throat raw. "No." Moody's expression did something strange, like approval trying to form and failing because Moody hated approving of anything. "Good," he growled. "That's how you live." Neville stared at Harry. She tried to take me." Harry nodded once. Neville's voice shook. "Why?" Harry's stomach tightened. Hermione answered, voice sharp with dawning horror. "Because of the prophecy." Neville went pale. "What prophecy?" Harry's chest went cold. This was the domino he hadn't wanted to fall. This was the secret he'd never wanted Neville forced to touch. Harry looked at Neville, really looked, and saw it. Neville's hands trembling, but his feet still planted. His eyes wide, but not empty. Fear, yes, but also something harder underneath. Harry heard Bellatrix's whisper in the back of his mind. Choose. Harry made the choice again. Not the easy one. The honest one. There's a prophecy about me, Harry said quietly. And Voldemort. And it could have been you. Neville stared. His throat bobbed. Me? Hermione swallowed, eyes shining with anger and pity. Yes. Neville's face tightened, like he was trying to understand why the world had been hiding a knife behind its back. Kingsley stepped closer, voice low. Neville, you're safe. Wheel. Neville cut him off, shaking. No, he said, voice suddenly fierce. No, don't say that. Everyone froze. Neville looked at Harry, eyes wet, jaw clenched. I'm not safe, Neville said. I've never been safe. My parents, his voice cracked. My parents weren't safe. So don't tell me that. Harry's throat tightened painfully. Neville wiped his face hard with his sleeve like he was angry at the tears for existing. He squared his shoulders. What do I do? Neville asked. The question hit Harry like a spell. Not why me. Not I can't. What do I do? Harry stared at him and felt something complicated twist in his chest. Respect, guilt, fear. Dumbledore's voice came softly from behind them. You learn, Dumbledore said, and you do not learn alone. Harry turned. Dumbledore stood there like he always did, calm, composed, eyes bright with too much understanding. But there was steel in his voice now. Bellatrix has shown her hand, Dumbledore continued. She is no longer only hunting Harry Potter's reflexes. He looked at Neville. She is hunting the war's alternative outcomes, Dumbledore said quietly. The paths we did not take. Harry's scar throbbed faintly at the words. Dumbledore's gaze returned to Harry. And she is telling you something else. Harry swallowed. What? Dumbledore's eyes were very clear. She is telling you, Dumbledore said, that she is willing to take someone you love without luring you first. Harry felt cold spread through his ribs. Next time, I won't knock. It hadn't been a threat. It had been a plan. Dumbledore spoke again, quieter. This is the cost of foresight, Harry. Harry's throat tightened. What cost? Dumbledore's gaze didn't soften. You will see threats before others do, he said, and you'll be tempted to become hard enough to carry them. Harry's hands clenched. Hermione's voice shook. We can protect him. We can protect Neville. Moody snorted. Protecting isn't a wall. It's movement. It's planning. Kingsley's voice was steady. We adjust. Dumbledore nodded. Yes. He looked at Neville again. Mr. Longbottom, I am sorry you were forced into this truth today. Neville swallowed, trembling, but he didn't look away. I'd rather know, he said hoarsely. I'm tired of being the last person to hear. Dumbledore's expression softened, just a little. Then you will not be the last again. Harry looked up the rooftops, scanning shadows he couldn't trust. Bellatrix had gotten what she wanted today. Not Neville. Not Harry chasing her. Something subtler. She'd learned that Harry would anchor to saving people, not to vengeance. She learned Neville could be shaken, but not broken. And she'd proven she could open doors in public. That meant the war had moved. A domino had fallen. Not by accident. By design. Harry's scar pulsed faintly, like laughter behind closed teeth. Hermione's quill scratched the dossier later that night in Grimmauld Place, her handwriting hard enough to tear parchment. Confirmed. Bellatrix has shifted targets Neville as leverage/alternative prophecy vector. Confirmed. Uses loud strike as cover for clean abduction attempt. New threat. Public doorway/portal magic. Mirror bridge variant. Counter. Anchor plus teamwork prevent snatch. Do not pursue. Protect the peace. Ron stared at the notes and muttered, We're all pieces now. Harry didn't argue. He just sat on his bed with the mirror shard in his palm, staring at his own eye in the glass. He looked calm, too calm, and that frightened him more than Bellatrix's laugh ever had. Because somewhere behind the doors in his mind, something knocked once, soft and confident. And this time it didn't feel hungry. It felt patient. The next week was the strangest kind of calm. Not peace, not safety, just the quiet you get when everyone has accepted that something is coming and they're building their lives around the impact point. Neville started coming to Grimmauld Place in short, carefully protected windows. Never the same time twice, never the same route twice, always with two Order members shadowing him like they were his second spine. Augusta Longbottom didn't like it, but she understood enough to stop arguing when Kingsley said, "It's this," or she tries again. Neville didn't complain. That was the part that unsettled Harry most. Neville trained. He stood in the library with his wand, trembling only slightly, and learned how to throw up a shield fast. Not pretty, not elegant, but fast enough to live. Hermione drilled him like she was trying to hammer the fear out of his muscles. Ron taught him the practical stuff Hermione didn't think about. How to keep your feet under you when you're panicking, how to duck when someone taller tries to hex over your shield, how to move like you're carrying something fragile. Harry watched Neville become harder around the edges and hated that Bellatrix had forced that change. Sirius watched too. He pretended he didn't. But Harry caught him standing in doorways, silent, eyes shadowed, watching Neville, watching Harry, watching the house like he wanted to rip it apart brick by brick just to find the place Bellatrix kept slipping through. Creature stayed away from Harry's room now. The amended orders held tight, like chains pulled taut. But that didn't mean the house was quiet. It meant the house was controlled. Because Dumbledore had done what he always did when faced with chaos. He'd turned it into geometry. The Order began speaking in code and moving meetings elsewhere. Grimmauld Place became, on purpose, the place where unimportant information lived. The place where Bellatrix would hear the wrong rhythm and think it was the real one. Hermione called it the false heartbeat. Moody called it bait. Sirius called it insulting. Harry didn't call it anything. He just made himself do it. On the 10th day after Diagon Alley, Harry's scar knocked hard enough to make his vision swim. He was mid-practice with Remus, eyes closed, standing in the corridor of his mind, hand on the letter anchor, when a knock became a shove. The hallway shook. A door rattled. Not the grief room, not the anger room. A new door, one Harry hadn't built. It wasn't his. It slammed open anyway, and Harry saw the Department of Mysteries. He'd never been there, not physically, but the vision gave him the place the way nightmares always did. Complete, sharp, wrong. White tile, endless black doors, air that tasted like cold stone and secrets. Then the vision slid into the Hall of Prophecy. Rows and rows of shelves, glass spheres glowing faintly like trapped moons. And in the center aisle, Neville, on his knees. His wand was gone. His hands were shaking. His face was bruised. A shadow moved behind him. Bellatrix's voice came soft and delighted, right beside Harry's ear, even though Harry was still standing in the library. "Here's your other ending, darling," she purred. "Come look at it." Harry's scar burned hotter. Neville looked up in the vision, eyes wide, mouth forming a word Harry couldn't hear. Then a wand tip touched Neville's cheek like a lover's finger. And Bellatrix whispered, almost kindly, "Choose." Harry's body lurched forward in the real world. Remus's hand caught his wrist instantly, iron steady. "Anchor," Remus said, voice hard. Harry's lungs seized. His mind screamed, "Move." But he'd built rooms. He'd built locks. He forced his hand back onto the letter in his mind. Who was knocking? The pressure in his skull surged, furious and hungry. Not Voldemort. Her. Bellatrix was pressing against his walls like she wanted to crack them with laughter. Harry ripped the mirror shard from his pocket with shaking fingers and snapped his eyes open. The library swam. Hermione and Ron were already there, drawn by instinct the way they'd started moving toward danger before they admitted they were doing it. Harry stared into the mirror. It shimmered. Kingsley's face appeared, blurred by movement and wind. "Harry," Kingsley said immediately. "Report." Harry's voice came out ragged. "Vision. Neville. Department of Mysteries." Kingsley's eyes sharpened. "Where are you?" "Grimmauld. Library." Harry swallowed hard. "Is Neville?" Kingsley didn't even hesitate. "Neville is in the back sitting room. With Tonks. He's eating a biscuit and arguing with Molly Weasley about whether he's allowed a second one." Harry's knees nearly went out. The vision flickered in his head. Neville bruised on cold tile. A lie. A bait shaped like love and responsibility. Harry exhaled sharply, shaking. "It's a lure." "Yes," Kingsley said, calm as stone. "And it's aimed at you. Stay anchored." Harry swallowed hard. "She's in the Ministry." Kingsley's jaw tightened. "Where she wants you to believe she is." Harry stared at the mirror, then whispered, "She showed me the Hall of Prophecy." Kingsley's eyes narrowed. "Understood." A second later, Kingsley's gaze flicked slightly off to the side, like he was listening to someone. Then his voice dropped. "Albus is here," Kingsley said. "We're moving." Harry's scar pulsed, almost pleased. Like Bellatrix had gotten the reaction she wanted anyway. Movement. But this time, the movement wasn't Harry sprinting alone. It was the Order moving as a machine. Dumbledore appeared in the library with no sound at all. One moment Harry was breathing too hard and trying not to vomit fear. The next moment Dumbledore was standing beside the bookshelf, eyes like winter sky, calm, bright, and sharp enough to cut. He didn't ask Harry what he'd seen. He didn't need to. He looked at Harry and said simply, "She is forcing the old story." Harry's throat tightened. "She used Neville." Dumbledore nodded once. "Because Neville is your lever now, and because she wishes to prove she can still write your choices." Hermione's voice shook. "But Neville's here, so it's fake." Dumbledore's eyes flicked to her. "It is a lure," he agreed. "But lures still have hooks." Ron swallowed. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Moody growled from the doorway, stomping in like a thundercloud. "She wants us to move where she wants. And if we don't, she'll hit something else while we're patting ourselves on the back." Kingsley stepped in behind Moody. Tonks was with him, face tight. "Orders?" Kingsley asked Dumbledore. Dumbledore's gaze turned inward for a fraction of a second, calculating. Then he said, "We go to the Ministry." Harry's heart slammed. Hermione's head snapped up. "But—" Dumbledore raised a hand. "Not as children chasing a vision," he said gently. "As a counter." Harry's scar throbbed, like it didn't like being talked about this way, like it hated the idea of the trap being turned. Dumbledore looked at Harry again. "Harry, you did the first correct thing. You verified." Harry's chest tightened. "You will now do the second correct thing," Dumbledore continued. "You will not lead with your body. You will lead with your mind." Harry swallowed. "Meaning I stay here." Moody snorted. "Don't faint. Kid's learning." But Dumbledore's eyes stayed on Harry, serious. "You may come," Dumbledore said. Harry's breath caught. "Only if you accept the rule," Dumbledore added. "You do not chase. You do not pursue Bellatrix. You do not separate." Sirius's voice came from the hall, sharp and furious. "He doesn't go." Sirius shoved into the library, eyes blazing. Harry felt the old tug in his chest, wanting to obey Sirius just because Sirius was serious. Bellatrix would love that too. Harry didn't move. Dumbledore looked at Sirius calmly. "He will." Sirius's jaw clenched. "Albus." "Because she is choosing Neville," Dumbledore said quietly. "And Harry will not sit while she tightens that noose." Sirius's eyes flicked to Harry, fear flashing beneath anger. Harry met Sirius's gaze and said, softly but firmly, "I won't go alone." Sirius's mouth opened, then closed again. That was the difference. Bellatrix wanted Sirius to explode and forbid it, forcing Harry into rebellion. Instead, Sirius swallowed his pride like it tasted like blood and said hoarsely, "Fine." Then, after a beat, "I'm going." Dumbledore nodded once. "Yes, you are." Harry saw it, how Sirius was trying, how that effort cost him. And Harry felt something in his chest twist, gratitude and terror braided together. They didn't apparate directly into the ministry. They did it in stages, like a heartbeat broken into safe pieces. First to a quiet alley, then to a deserted street, then to the edge of the ministry's visitor entrance, where the phone booth sat like a joke. Kingsley moved like he'd been born in this kind of operation. Quiet, precise, wand ready, but never flashy. Moody scanned everything. Tonks was pale and focused. Remus stayed close to Harry, a steady presence like gravity. Hermione and Ron were there too, because Harry refused to go without them, and Dumbledore had allowed it under strict conditions. Stay in formation. Follow the adults. Do not chase. If separated, regroup at the marked point. Neville insisted on coming as well. He stood in the alley, face pale but jaw set, wand trembling only slightly. "I'm not staying behind like a piece in a box," Neville said hoarsely. Augusta had tried to forbid it. Neville had looked at her and said, "Gran, she tried to take me in daylight. If she wants me, she'll come again. I'd rather stand with people who know." And Augusta, fierce, proud Augusta, had gone silent for a long moment. Then she'd said, "Bring him back." Harry felt the weight of that promise like a chain around his ribs. They entered the ministry the normal way. Because sometimes the safest way in was the door everyone expected you to use, if you had the right people with you. The phone booth dropped them into the ministry's belly with a clang, and Harry's skin crawled instantly. The air down here was wrong. Too clean, too still, like the building itself was holding secrets behind polished stone. Ron muttered, "Hate it." Hermione whispered, "Stay focused." They moved through corridors that smelled like parchment and magic. Harry's scar prickled faintly, like it recognized the place from the vision. "Choose," something whispered at the edge of his mind. Harry touched his mirror shard through his pocket, like a charm, and breathed. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? No answer. Just the sensation of being watched by a predator that enjoyed patience. They reached the lift. Moody jabbed the button with his wand like he wanted to kill it. The lift doors opened with a ding that felt too cheerful. They stepped inside. The doors slid shut, and the lift began to descend. Down, down, down. Harry's scar started to burn. Not stabbing, not screaming. A slow, delighted heat, like someone far away had leaned forward in their chair. The lift dinged and opened onto the Department of Mysteries. The corridor outside was the same in real life as it had been in the vision. White tile, bright lights, air that tasted like cold stone and secrets. Hermione inhaled sharply. "It's real." Neville's breath came fast. Sirius's hand brushed Harry's shoulder, brief, grounding. Dumbledore stepped out first. The white corridor seemed to dim around him, like his presence bent the light. Formation Kingsley murmure. They formed up without speaking, adults flanking, teens in the center, Neville protected like the most valuable piece on the board. Harry hated that and understood it. They moved toward the circular chamber of doors. In the center, the black fountain shimmered like ink. The doors waited. All identical. All wrong. "Mark point," Hermione whispered, and Ron nodded, touching his pocket where she'd insisted he carry a small enchanted coin. 1 tap meant regroup, 2 meant danger, 3 meant run. Moody's magical eye word, scanning every door in a slow sweep. "Someone's been here," Moody growled. Tonks whispered, "How can you tell?" Moody spat, air's wrong. Harry's scar prickled. Then, soft as breath, Bellatrix's voice slid into his mind. Not loud, not forced, just near. You came anyway. Harry's stomach dropped. He didn't answer. He didn't move. He built his room in his mind so fast it felt like snapping a door shut. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? The presence pressed, amused. Then, like claws tapping, Bellatrix's laughter brushed the inside of Harry's skull. Good boy. Harry's grip tightened on his wand. He didn't chase. He didn't respond. But he looked at Dumbledore and understood something with sick clarity. Bellatrix wasn't just here to steal a prophecy. She was here to stand in the exact place Harry's old story said he would fall and see if the rewrite held. Dumbledore's gaze flicked to Harry, just a fraction, then forward again. He knew. He raised his wand. Softly, he spoke a spell Harry didn't recognize. A thin silver line shot out and traced across the tile like a spiderweb. Anti-apparition net. Hermione breathed, almost reverent. Kingsley followed with another spell, golden bands that sank into the floor like invisible chains. Moody grunted. Good. Trap the rats. One of the doors clicked. Everyone froze. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. Just a quiet click that made Harry's scar burn hotter. The door on the far side opened a crack. Darkness spilled out like ink. A voice came from that darkness, low and delighted. Hello, Bellatrix purred. The door swung wider. Bellatrix Lestrange stepped into the white corridor like she belonged there. Hair like a storm, eyes too bright, wand in her hand like an extension of her fingers. And she was smiling. Not wild, not manic. Controlled. Her gaze swept the group. Dumbledore, Moody, Kingsley, Remus, Tonks. Then the teens. Then Neville. Bellatrix's smile widened just slightly. There you are, she said softly, like she'd been looking forward to seeing him. Neville went pale. Harry's scar surged with heat. Bellatrix's eyes flicked to Harry last. And when she looked at him, her smile turned intimate, like they were sharing a secret. You brought an audience, she murmured. How disciplined. Sirius stepped forward, voice shaking with fury. You. Bellatrix's eyes didn't even land on him. That dismissal hit harder than any insult. I didn't come for you, cousin, Bellatrix said lazily. I came for the choice. Her gaze slid back to Neville. And Harry understood in the coldest part of his mind. She wasn't here to grab Neville and run. Not yet. She was here to make Harry think she could. To force Harry's body to betray his new discipline. To make him break formation. To prove the rewrite was just a costume. Bellatrix lifted her wand, slow, theatrical. Not to cast at Neville. To cast at a prophecy shelf visible through the open door behind her. A glass sphere floated into view, glowing faintly. Bellatrix's voice turned soft and delighted. Tell me, Harry, do you know how many endings exist? Harry's scar burned. Dumbledore's voice cut in, calm and sharp. Enough. Bellatrix's eyes narrowed slightly, as if annoyed by the interruption. Dumbledore raised his wand. The air changed, like pressure before a storm. Bellatrix's smile returned, sharper. Oh yes, she murmured. Let's. She flicked her wand, fast, nonverbal. And the corridor exploded into motion. Spells cracked like whips. Shields flared. Moody's roar tore through the air. Down! Harry dropped instantly, pulling Hermione and Ron with him. A curse screamed overhead and shattered against Kingsley's shield, spraying sparks like angry insects. Tonks fired stunners into the doorway. Remus's spells were controlled and tight, aimed to disable, not kill. Bellatrix moved like she'd been born dancing through fire. She didn't trade spells like a normal duelist. She wove. She cast and shifted and smiled, always smiling, as if the danger was a stage she enjoyed. And all the while, her gaze kept flicking again and again to Harry, watching for the moment he broke. Then Bellatrix did it. She laughed, soft, delighted, and flicked her wand toward Neville. Not a killing curse. Something worse. A thin black ribbon of magic that snapped around Neville's ankle like a leash. Neville cried out, stumbling. Harry's body surged forward, and he stopped, right at the edge of the movement, because Hermione's hand shot out and grabbed his sleeve. Formation, she hissed, eyes wild. Harry's scar screamed at him to move. Bellatrix's voice slid through his mind like smoke. There it is, the door. Harry forced his breathing steady. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? The hunger pressed. Harry didn't open. He pointed his wand, not at Bellatrix, at the ribbon around Neville. Defendo. The ribbon snapped cleanly and evaporated. Neville staggered back into Kingsley's shield line, gasping. Bellatrix's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Not fear. Surprise. Like she'd expected Harry to run. He hadn't. Her smile sharpened into something almost angry. Oh, Bellatrix whispered. Clever. Then, with a flick of her wand, she hurled the prophecy sphere toward the ground. Glass should have shattered, but it didn't, because Dumbledore moved like lightning. His wand flashed. The sphere froze in midair, hovering inches above the tile. Bellatrix laughed, delighted again, still saving fragile things. Albus? Dumbledore's eyes were ice. Yes. Bellatrix's gaze flicked to Harry. And you, she murmured, still saving everyone. Harry didn't answer. He raised his wand and cast, fast, clean, at the door behind her. Colloportus! The door slammed shut. Bellatrix's head snapped around. She hissed, annoyed, genuine annoyance, control cracking slightly. Then Moody's spell hit the tile beside her feet, and the floor erupted in a net of white-hot light. Bellatrix leapt, too late. For a heartbeat, she was caught, ankles snagged in the net, posture forced awkward. Moody snarled, triumphant. Got you. Bellatrix's smile returned, slow and vicious. No, she purred. You got my shoe. Her ankle twisted impossibly, like her bones had decided rules were optional. She slipped free with a movement that was half technique, half unnatural grace. And before Moody could slam another curse into her, Bellatrix flung her wand upward. The lights in the corridor flickered. Doors around the chamber clicked, one after another. Ron's voice shook. Why are the doors? Because she planned this, Hermione hissed. Bellatrix's eyes glittered. You can't trap me in a maze, she whispered, delighted. I am the maze. Then she smiled at Harry one last time, intimate, poisonous. Next time, she murmured, and Harry felt the words in his scar like a kiss that burned. I'll take him faster. And she vanished, not by apparition, the net would have stopped it, but by stepping sideways into a door that had opened behind her like it was waiting. The door slammed shut. Silence hit. The corridor hummed with the aftermath of spells. Neville was breathing hard, pale but standing. Kingsley's shield line held. Moody looked like he wanted to bite through the wall. And Dumbledore stared at the closed door Bellatrix had used with an expression that wasn't anger. It was calculation. She has an internal route, Kingsley said tightly. A path through the department we didn't block. Moody spat. Or a helper. Hermione whispered, horrified. She's mapped the doors. Dumbledore's gaze stayed on the door. Then he said quietly, no. They all looked at him. Dumbledore's eyes were very clear. She did not merely map them, he said. She owned them, for a moment. Harry's scar pulsed faintly, like it enjoyed that truth. Dumbledore turned to Harry. You did not chase, Dumbledore said. Harry's throat tightened. No. And Neville remains here, Dumbledore continued. Neville swallowed, eyes fixed on the door Bellatrix had vanished through. Yes, Neville said hoarsely. I'm here. Dumbledore nodded once. Then, Dumbledore said softly, we have won the first half. Ron blinked. First half. Moody growled. Means she didn't come for the prophecy. Hermione's eyes widened. Oh no. Harry's stomach dropped. Because the moment Hermione said it, Harry felt it like a cold finger down his spine. They had expected Bellatrix to steal the sphere. She hadn't. She'd thrown it, tested Dumbledore, tested Harry. She'd done something else instead. Kingsley, Dumbledore said, voice suddenly sharp, check the upper levels. Now. Kingsley's mirror-like calm cracked into urgency. Tonks, Remus move. They moved fast, running back toward the lift. And Harry's scar began to burn again. Not delighted. Satisfied. Like a move had just landed elsewhere. Harry pulled the mirror's shard out with shaking fingers. It shimmered immediately. Kingsley's face appeared, breath hard. We have a breach, Kingsley snapped. Not in the hall. Harry's throat went dry. Where? Kingsley swallowed once. The department's entrance, Kingsley said. A masked operative slipped past the visitor level. They weren't coming for the prophecy. Harry's heart slammed. What were they coming for? He whispered. Kingsley's voice went very quiet. They were coming for someone upstairs. Harry's blood went cold. And in the back of his mind, Bellatrix's whisper returned, soft as silk, cruel as truth. I won't knock. Harry didn't realize how badly his hands were shaking until the lift doors opened upstairs and cold air hit his knuckles like water. The ministry corridor was chaos, but the quiet kind. Not screaming crowds like Diagon Alley. This was controlled panic. People running in the wrong direction because they'd been told to run somewhere. Alarms chiming faintly behind enchanted walls, and Aurors snapping orders that bounced off stone and turned into echoes. Kingsley was already moving. Tonks, left corridor. Remus, stairs. Moody, watched the lift. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It had that iron weight that made the world obey. Harry stayed in formation like Dumbledore had ordered. Hermione and Ron close. Neville protected in the center like a piece of glass. Sirius's hand hovered near Harry's shoulder, not touching, like he was forcing himself to trust Harry's control, but still ready to grab him if he slipped. Then Kingsley's urgent words from the mirror repeated in Harry's skull. They weren't coming for the prophecy. They were coming for someone upstairs. And Harry felt it, the move behind the move. Bellatrix didn't want a prophecy sphere. She wanted the story the prophecy created. The story where Harry ran. The story where Harry arrived too late. The story where love became a leash. They turned a corner and saw the target. A man lay half-propped against the wall, robe scorched, face gray with pain. Red hair, kind eyes pinched tight. Arthur Weasley. Mrs. Weasley's husband. Ron's dad. Ron made a strangled sound and surged forward. Harry caught his sleeve before he could break the line. Ron, wait, Harry hissed. Ron's eyes were wild. That's my... I know, Harry snapped low. But line. Ron shook, jaw clenched so hard it looked like it hurt. Hermione grabbed Ron's other arm, anchoring him. Tonks was already kneeling by Arthur, wand moving in quick, practiced motions. He's alive, she said sharply. Breathing. Curse burn, not a killing hex. Moody's magical eye word, scanning Arthur's robes, the floor, the ceiling, the air itself. Trap, Moody growled. And Harry saw it. A small black coin, round as a galleon and dark as spilled ink, sat near Arthur's hand like it had rolled there innocently. Harry's scar prickled, recognition. The same portal seed the masked Death Eater had used in Diagon Alley. Don't touch it, Hermione snapped. Moody grunted, already wasn't going to. Kingsley raised his wand and spoke a spell that sounded like locking metal. A faint golden ring flared around the coin. The air around it stopped moving. Containment, Kingsley said. Moody, disarm. Moody spat and stepped forward, wand steady. His magical eye spun once, twice, then locked. He didn't cast. He just growled, clever. Harry's stomach dropped. What? Moody's voice was harsh. It's not set to open here. It's set to open where you run to. A trap that didn't spring until the prey moved. Harry's skin went cold. Bellatrix wasn't just trying to injure Arthur. She was trying to make Ron break formation. Make Harry follow. Make the kids scatter like frightened birds so the department's doors could swallow them one by one. Dumbledore's voice cut in, calm but sharp. She is conducting. Harry turned. Dumbledore stood behind them, wand lowered but presence humming like a ward. His eyes went from Arthur to the coin to Ron's face, and then to Harry. She placed a bruise, Dumbledore said quietly, to see who flinches. Ron's face twisted, fury and fear fighting. He's hurt. Yes, Dumbledore said, and there was no softness in it, only truth. And she counted on that. Arthur groaned faintly. Tonks whispered a stabilizing charm, keeping his breathing steady. Kingsley looked at Dumbledore. Masked operative? Moody's jaw tightened. Gone. Slipped out when we moved downstairs. That was the point. A piece had fallen. Not by accident. By design. Harry felt the words from the dossier slam into place. Sometimes winning means letting a piece fall on purpose. It tasted awful. Neville swallowed, pale. She did this to make you all move? Dumbledore looked at him, eyes clear. Yes. Hermione's voice shook with controlled rage. Then what do we do? Dumbledore's gaze settled on the black coin in Kingsley's ring of containment. We do not chase the hand, Dumbledore said softly. We close the fingers. Moody grunted. Meaning? Dumbledore's mouth tightened. Meaning we stop responding to her rhythm and force her to respond to ours. Harry's scar pulsed faintly, like it didn't like that sentence. Dumbledore looked at Harry. She entered the department to test you and map routes. She sent the masked operative to bruise the upstairs levels and pull your attention. Now she expects us to do what we always do. Sirius's voice was low, dangerous. And what's that? Dumbledore met his eyes. React. Silence held the corridor for a beat. Then Dumbledore said, we set the counter trap. Harry's stomach tightened. Ow! Dumbledore's gaze returned to Harry, and there was something in it Harry hadn't seen before. Not distance. Inclusion. You, Dumbledore said quietly, will become the bait she cannot resist. Harry's scar sparked, hot and eager. Hermione snapped, absolutely not. No, Dumbledore corrected gently. Not your body, not your life. He raised a hand before anyone could argue further. Your signal. Kingsley's eyes narrowed, a controlled mental opening. Remus stiffened. Albus, he's 14. Dumbledore's voice stayed calm, and he is already being hunted in his mind. We cannot pretend otherwise. Harry swallowed hard. His mouth had gone dry. What do you need me to do? Harry asked, because the question was already living in his chest like a stone. Dumbledore's eyes held his. You will build a door, he said softly, and you will leave it unlocked, just enough for her to think she can push through. Hermione looked sick. That's insane. It is risky, Dumbledore agreed. Harry felt his heart hammering. And the trap. Dumbledore's gaze flicked toward the lifts, the direction back down to the Department of Mysteries. The department's doors respond to attention, Dumbledore said. To intention. Bellatrix exploited that. So we will do the same. Moody growled, already understanding. We picked a room. We set the net. Kingsley nodded. Anti-door anchors. Hermione's eyes widened. Can you even do that? Dumbledore's expression turned faintly grim. Yes. Harry's scar throbbed, unhappy. Sirius stepped forward, voice rough. And what's the cost? Dumbledore didn't look away. We must commit. If we hesitate halfway, she will feel it and strike where we are weakest. Ron swallowed hard, eyes flicking to his father on the floor. Harry felt it too, the cruel math of war. If they went all in on trapping Bellatrix, someone else might get hurt in the meantime. The masked operative was already gone. Arthur was already down. Bellatrix had proven she could bruise a place while she smiled somewhere else. And now Dumbledore wanted to stop trying to dodge her knives, and instead catch her hand. Harry looked at Ron. Ron's face was tight, eyes wet with fury he wouldn't let fall. Ron met Harry's gaze and gave a tiny nod that didn't feel like permission so much as acceptance. Hermione's throat bobbed. Harry. Harry took a breath. Common room. Fire. Letter. He touched the letter in his mind and made the choice he hated. Do it, Harry said. Sirius's hand clamped onto Harry's shoulder hard. You don't get to do this alone, Sirius said, voice shaking. You hear me? Harry nodded once. I won't. Dumbledore's gaze softened by a fraction. Good. Kingsley snapped orders controlled and fast. Tonks, get Arthur to St. Mungo's now. Remus, go with her. Moody, hold this corridor. Sirius, stay with Harry. Remus hesitated, eyes on Harry. Harry forced a steadier breath. Go, he whispered. Help him. Remus's jaw tightened. Then he nodded once and followed Tonks as she levitated Arthur carefully, moving with urgent grace. Ron watched his father disappear down the corridor and looked like he'd swallow glass. Hermione squeezed Ron's hand without looking down, and Ron held on like he needed something real to stop the world from slipping. Then Dumbledore turned, and they moved. Back down. Back into the white-tiled belly of the Ministry. Back to the place where doors listened. The Department of Mysteries was colder now, as if it had felt Bellatrix's touch and remembered. The circular chamber of doors waited, silent and identical. Moody spat. I hate this place. Dumbledore didn't disagree. He simply raised his wand and began to draw something in the air, thin silver lines like thread. The threads drifted outward and sank into the floor, stretching toward specific doors as if the building itself had been stitched. Hermione's voice went almost breathless. He's anchoring the door logic. Kingsley followed with his own spell, golden bands that sank into the tile like invisible chains. Moody muttered, It's going up. Sirius stayed close to Harry. He didn't pace. He didn't rant. He looked focused, which was somehow scarier than his anger. Dumbledore stepped close to Harry. Listen carefully, he said softly. This is not about being brave. It is about being precise. Harry swallowed. I know. You will let her hear you, Dumbledore continued. Not by speaking, by loosening a latch in your mind. Just enough. Harry's scar prickled, as if something far away smiled. And when she presses, Dumbledore said, voice very calm, you will not slam the door. You will not invite her in. You will simply keep her attention on the wrong hallway. Harry's throat tightened. A false corridor. Dumbledore nodded once. Exactly. Hermione looked like she wanted to argue until she ran out of lungs, but she didn't. She just stepped closer, eyes fierce. We're right here, she whispered to Harry. Okay, if you start to slip, I yank you back. Ron swallowed and added, voice hoarse, yeah, no hero stuff. Harry nodded, feeling oddly numb. No hero stuff. Dumbledore's eyes flicked toward the nearest door. Time room, he said quietly. Moody grunted. Makes sense. She likes theatrics. Time is a good stage. Kingsley's wand flicked. Positions. They moved. Adults flanking. Teens in the center. But now, the center had a purpose. Now, Harry wasn't just being protected. Harry was being used. And the worst part was, Harry understood why. They entered the time room. It wasn't like the vision had shown him. It was stranger. Clocks of every kind ticked on walls that didn't quite meet the ceiling. Glass bell jars held spinning sand that moved backward. Chains hung from nowhere. The air smelled like old parchment and lightning. And in the center, a mechanism of brass rings rotated slowly, like a planet system pretending to be a machine. Dumbledore's wand traced one last symbol on the floor, simple, elegant. Harry felt the room tighten, like it had taken a breath and decided to hold it. Anti-apparition, Hermione whispered. An anti-door, Kingsley added, voice grim. If it holds. Moody's eyes spun. If she doesn't have a back route. Dumbledore's voice was quiet. She will, but she won't use it if she thinks she can take what she came for. Harry. Harry swallowed hard. Dumbledore stepped close enough that only Harry could hear him clearly. Now, Dumbledore said, build your false corridor. Harry closed his eyes. Common room. Fire. Letter. Then he built a hallway branching away, one he chose this time. A corridor that felt like the department. White tile, black doors, torches, echo. At the end, he placed something Bellatrix would run toward. Not Sirius. Not Hermione. Not Neville. A thing Bellatrix loved more than any hostage. Control. He pictured himself, alone, standing before a prophecy sphere. His hand reaching. His breathing panicked. His old self. A perfect little story. He placed that image at the end of the hall like a lantern. Then, trembling, he loosened the latch. Just a crack. His scarf flared. The room seemed to dim around him, as if the air itself noticed something had opened. A pressure slid into his mind, smooth, hungry, amused. Bellatrix. Her laughter brushed the inside of Harry's skull like a fingernail. There you are. Harry's stomach rolled. He didn't answer. He didn't open further. He simply held the crack and let her attention lock onto the false corridor. The pressure surged. She pushed, tasting the opening like a predator tasting blood and water. Show me, her voice purred inside his head. Harry kept breathing, kept touching the letter in his mind. Common room. Fire. Letter. Who is knocking? The answer came like silk. Me. And then the door in the real room clicked. Not the one behind them. The one across the time room, opening into darkness like a grin. Bellatrix Lestrange stepped through as if she'd been invited. She moved like she owned gravity. Hair wild but controlled, eyes bright and sharp, wand angled lazily like she wasn't worried. Like this was her room. Her gaze snapped to Harry instantly, and her smile softened. Not kind. Intimate. Predatory. You're learning, she murmured aloud. How darling. Harry's scar burned. Bellatrix took one step forward, and the floor's ward lines flared. Golden chains of light snapped up like netting, wrapping around her ankles. For the first time, Bellatrix's smile twitched. Not fear. Surprise. She looked down slowly, as if insulted. Then she laughed. Oh, she purred. Albus, you made me jewelry. Dumbledore raised his wand, calm as stone. Bellatrix. Bellatrix's eyes didn't leave Harry. Still hiding behind grown-ups? She asked Harry softly, like she was teasing a child. Harry didn't answer. He didn't react. He stayed in his mind, hand on the letter, breathing steady. Bellatrix's smile sharpened. She flicked her wand non-verbally. A blast hit Kingsley's shield like a hammer. Kingsley staggered one step. Only one, but the force of it made Hermione gasp. Bellatrix moved again, fast, vicious, elegant. But the net held. Her ankle jerked, caught. She hissed. Actual irritation, actual loss of smoothness. Moody barked. That's it. Keep her in the box. Bellatrix's eyes flashed to Moody, and for a second the madness underneath her discipline showed its teeth. Don't tell me what to do, she snapped, and the words weren't playful anymore. She whipped her wand, too fast for Harry to track cleanly, and Moody's shield cracked, sparks screaming outward. Moody stumbled. Sirius surged forward. Harry grabbed Sirius's sleeve. Sirius froze, breath harsh. Harry shook his head once. No chasing, no breaking formation. Sirius's hands trembled, but he held. Bellatrix saw the moment. Saw Sirius stop. Saw Harry control him. And something in her expression cracked. Just a sliver. Disbelief. Then anger. Don't you dare, Bellatrix hissed at Harry, voice suddenly sharp. Don't you dare pretend you're above it. Harry's scar flared like a struck match. Bellatrix pushed again, hard, against the crack in Harry's mind. Not knocking. Shoving. Trying to force the latch wider. Harry's vision swam. His heart raced. But he had built rooms. He had anchors. And he had people. Hermione's hand clenched around his wrist, grounding him to the present. Ron stood beside her, pale but solid, wand up. Sirius hovered like a guard dog, ready but obeying. Bellatrix felt it. Felt that Harry wasn't alone in the hallway anymore. And her control, her beautiful disciplined madness, began to fray. She laughed too loudly, cast too sharply. Her spells started to carry emotion instead of pure purpose. Fine, Bellatrix snarled, eyes blazing. If you won't choose. She lifted her wand toward Neville. Neville went rigid. Harry's stomach clenched. And then Dumbledore moved. Not flashy. Not dramatic. Just fast. Dumbledore's spell wasn't a curse. It was a twist in the air, a redirect. Bellatrix's hex snapped sideways and smashed into a glass bell jar. The jar exploded. Time sand spilled. The room lurched. A sound like 1,000 clocks screaming at once filled the air. Bellatrix staggered, thrown off balance for the first time. Her eyes widened, real alarm, real instinct. Because she loved chaos, but she didn't love chaos she didn't control. The net tightened around her ankles. Kingsley stepped forward and drove his wand down like a judge's gavel. Incarcerus. Ropes shot out, thick, glowing, and wrapped Bellatrix's torso, pinning her arms for one sharp second. Bellatrix screamed. Not in pain. In rage. How dare you? She jerked her shoulders, and the ropes began to smoke as if her fury burned them. Moody barked, "Stun her." 3 stunners hit her shields. She had shields even bound, even netted. That was the level she fought at. Bellatrix's head snapped up. Her eyes locked on Harry. And the look she gave him then wasn't teasing. It was naked hate. "You opened the door," she whispered, voice shaking with fury. "You opened it for me and then slammed it in my face." Harry's scar burned like fire. Bellatrix's lips peeled back in something that wasn't a smile at all. "You think you can end the game?" she hissed. "You think you can control me?" Harry's mouth was dry. He didn't answer. He didn't give her the scene. That's what ended her patience. Bellatrix threw her head back and laughed, sharp, ugly, uncontrolled. And then she did something reckless. She snapped her wand downward and shattered her own shield. On purpose. The net didn't just hold her ankles anymore. It flared, reacting to the sudden drop like it had been waiting. But in the same instant, Bellatrix used the gap to hurl a single spell, not at a person. At the room. At the rotating brass mechanism. The spell hit. The mechanism screamed. The room warped like a sheet being snapped in the wind. And Bellatrix, still laughing, slipped sideways through a ripple of reality. Not apparition. Not a door. A tear. A back route she'd built with chaos. She escaped. But not cleanly. Not graceful. Not triumphant. As she vanished, Moody's curse clipped her shoulder. Not a lethal curse. Moody didn't have time for that, and Dumbledore wouldn't allow it here. A disabling hit. Bellatrix's laugh broke into a snarl. And something fell to the floor where she'd been. A thin black shard of mirror glass, smoking at the edges. Evidence. A piece of her method. A piece of her maze. Silence slammed into the room after she was gone. The clocks kept ticking like nothing had happened. Harry swayed, scar throbbing like a bruise. Hermione tightened her grip on his wrist. "Harry, are you?" "I'm here," Harry forced out. Ron exhaled, shaking. "We almost had her." Moody spat. "We hurt her. That matters." Kingsley stepped forward and picked up the black mirror shard with a conjured cloth, careful. Dumbledore stared at the spot where Bellatrix had torn reality and slipped out. His voice was quiet. "She is no longer amused." Sirius's breath came hard. "Good." Dumbledore turned to Harry. "You did well," Dumbledore said softly. "You held the latch. You did not let her in." Harry swallowed, but she still got away. Dumbledore's eyes were calm. "Yes," he agreed, "but she left something behind." Kingsley held up the shard and the cloth. "We can trace this. It's key." Hermione's eyes widened. "To her route." Moody grunted. "To her maze." Neville swallowed hard. "So, we can predict where she'll step next?" Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. "Not predict," he corrected gently. "Limit." Harry's scar pulsed faintly, angry. And then Harry understood the real outcome of the trap. They hadn't captured Bellatrix. They'd done something more dangerous. They'd shown her the rewrite was real. Harry wasn't her puppet anymore. And that meant Bellatrix would stop playing for fun. She'd start playing to win. A warm shimmer in Harry's pocket made him flinch. The mirror shard. Harry yanked it out. Kingsley's face appeared, breath hard. "Update." Harry's voice came out rough. "We trapped her. She escaped injured. We recovered a mirror shard." Kingsley's eyes narrowed. "Good. But Harry, listen." Harry's stomach dropped. "What?" Kingsley swallowed once. "The masked operative didn't vanish," Kingsley said quietly. "They showed up at St. Mungo's 10 minutes before Tonks arrived." Harry went cold. "They left a message," Kingsley continued, voice flat. "No casualties. Just a message carved into a door." Harry's scar prickled like it recognized the handwriting again. Kingsley's jaw clenched. "It says, 'I can bruise you anywhere.'" Harry stared at the mirror, heart hammering. Bellatrix had lost control in the time room. But she'd won something anyway. She'd proven that even when trapped, she could still move pieces elsewhere. And the cost of the Order's trap was now written in stone. They could catch her hand. But the war didn't stop while they tried. Dumbledore's voice was very quiet behind Harry. Chapter 10. Dumbledore murmured, almost to himself, "Then we end this." Harry swallowed hard, scar throbbing. Because he knew what end this meant. It meant the next trap wouldn't be a lesson. It would be a finish. They didn't sleep. Not really. Not the kind of sleep that lets your body forget it's afraid. They returned to Grimmauld Place with Arthur stabilized at St. Mungo's, Bellatrix injured but alive and furious somewhere in the dark, and a smoking shard of mirror glass wrapped in Kingsley's enchanted cloth like it might whisper if you listened too closely. The house felt smaller than ever. Not because the walls had moved, because the war had gotten inside them. Dumbledore called the Order meeting in the library. No kitchen, no drawing room, no place the house itself could remember. He put wards on the door that made Harry's teeth itch and the air smell faintly of thunderstorms. And then Dumbledore placed the mirror shard on the table like it was a chess piece. Everyone stared at it. Kingsley didn't waste time. "It's keyed," Kingsley said. "I can feel the tether, but it's not a straight line, more like a network. Doors, corridors, anchors." Moody's magical eye word, fixed on shard. "Maze magic," he spat. Hermione leaned in, eyes bright despite the exhaustion. "It's a routing focus," she whispered. "Like a node." Ron stared at the shard like it might bite him. "So, we can follow her?" "Not follow," Dumbledore corrected calm. "Corner." Sirius's voice was raw. "Where?" Dumbledore's eyes lifted. "Where she believes she has the highest authority." Everyone went quiet, because there was only one answer. Azkaban, Hermione whispered, horrified. Dumbledore's gaze flicked to her. Yes. Harry felt his stomach drop. Bellatrix's mythology lived in two places: Voldemort's shadow and the prison that had broken her mind into something that could burn without guilt. If she retreated anywhere, it would be to the place that made her feel strong. But Moody snarled, "We can't march into Azkaban." Kingsley nodded. "Not without Ministry permission." "And the Ministry is the Ministry," Ron muttered, bitter, and Harry almost smiled because, yes, exactly. Dumbledore didn't look bothered. "We will not march," Dumbledore said softly. "We will invite." Sirius's eyes narrowed. "Invite her?" Dumbledore's gaze slid to Harry. Harry's scar prickled immediately, like it sensed attention the way a wound senses cold. "You," Dumbledore said gently, "have become Bellatrix's obsession." Harry swallowed. "Because I don't react." Dumbledore nodded once. "Because you are slipping out of her grasp. She cannot bear it." Hermione's voice shook. "That means she'll do something worse." "Yes," Dumbledore agreed, and there was no comfort in the word. He picked up the cloth-wrapped shard and held it as if it was delicate. "This shard," Dumbledore said quietly, "is not merely a piece of mirror. It is a piece of her method, her routing, her shortcut through locked spaces." Moody spat, "Like a skeleton key." "Indeed," Dumbledore said. He looked at Kingsley. "If we build a false corridor," Dumbledore said, "and connect it to this shard, then when she reaches for Harry's mind through her network." Kingsley's eyes sharpened. "She'll reach into a trap." Hermione's breath caught, like a reverse bridge. Ron swallowed. "So you're gonna yank her through?" "No," Dumbledore said calmly. "We will hold her in place long enough to bind her." Sirius's jaw clenched. "Bind her how?" Dumbledore's voice went very quiet. "With law." Moody snorted. "Law doesn't stop monsters." Dumbledore's eyes were steel. "It stops movement," he replied. "And for Bellatrix Lestrange, movement is everything." Harry felt cold in his ribs, because he understood the finish. This wasn't about killing her. It was about removing her from the war as a function. Neutralizing her like you neutralize a curse, not with rage, but with the correct counterspell. Dumbledore looked at Harry. "This will require your discipline again," he said softly. "More than ever." Harry swallowed. "What do I do?" Dumbledore's voice was gentle. "You will let her believe you are breaking." Harry's stomach turned. "Breaking?" "Yes," Dumbledore said. "Not truly, but she must taste it." Hermione snapped. "That's horrible." "It is," Dumbledore agreed without flinching. "But Bellatrix responds to one thing reliably: the idea that she is about to win." Harry stared at the mirror shard, throat tight. So the final trap wasn't strength. It was acting. He hated that too. But he nodded. "Okay," Harry said quietly. "Tell me how." They didn't plan it like a battle. They planned it like a stage play. Moody insisted on contingencies. Kingsley insisted on legal authority. Hermione insisted on precision. Sirius insisted on being as close to Harry as physically possible. Remus, still shaken from Arthur, insisted on anchors and rest and food, and got ignored until he slammed a mug down hard enough to make everyone jump. "Your brains won't hold if your bodies collapse," Remus snapped, and nobody argued after that. They chose the location carefully. Not Azkaban itself. Azkaban was too far, too guarded, too unpredictable. Instead, they chose a ministry holding annex, a secure, warded room used for temporary containment during high-risk transfers. A room with official seals. A room with records. A room with an authorized Auror chain of custody. If Bellatrix was caught there, she couldn't just disappear in a shadow corridors without it being a declaration of war against the ministry itself. And Bellatrix loved authority. Even as she broke it, she loved proving she could. Kingsley quietly arranged access using his badge and the chaos of recent attacks. Moody borrowed additional wards. Dumbledore layered the room in old magic that made Harry's bones feel steady, like the walls were holding their breath. Hermione called it a spell net. Moody called it a box with teeth. Harry stood in the center of it. It was a plain room, lit by harsh lantern light. Chains hung from the ceiling. Not real chains, but enchanted ones, ready to tighten at a command. Runes carved into the floor glowed faintly under a thin layer of dust. At the far end of the room sat a table. On the table sat the mirror shard, wrapped in cloth. And beside it, a second shard. Harry's mirror shard. Dumbledore had placed them opposite each other, like two eyes staring. "This is the corridor," Dumbledore murmured. "This is the bridge, and this is the latch." He looked at Harry. "Remember, you do not invite her. You do not fight her. You do not answer her." Harry nodded, throat tight. Sirius stood behind him, so close Harry could feel his breathing. Ron and Hermione stood to the side, wands up, faces pale but set. Kingsley and Moody formed the outer ring, silent and lethal. Dumbledore held his wand like a conductor. "Anchor," Remus whispered, voice low. He wasn't allowed inside the room. Too many variables, but he waited outside the ward line, eyes fixed on Harry like he could pull him back with sheer will. Harry closed his eyes. Common room. Fire. Letter. He touched the letter in his mind. And then, slowly, carefully, he built the false corridor. Not the time room. Not the hall of prophecy. Something Bellatrix would taste and recognize. The most dangerous thing he could offer. Harry alone, exhausted, angry, slipping. He pictured himself in a corridor like Grimmauld Place. Dark wallpaper, narrow hall, standing in front of a door marked with the black crest. He pictured Sirius screaming behind the door. He pictured Hermione's voice begging. He pictured Ron shouting. He pictured panic. He placed that image at the end of the corridor like a candle in the dark. Then, with every muscle in his body screaming against it, Harry loosened the latch. Just enough. His scar warmed. A presence drifted close, amused. "Ah, Bellatrix." Her laughter brushed the inside of his skull like silk. "There you are, finally." Harry kept breathing. Fire. Letter. Common room. Who is knocking? The answer came like a kiss that burned. "Me." Then Bellatrix pressed. Harder than before. Not a polite shove. A force. Harry's vision blurred at the edges. His fingers twitched. He felt the temptation to open wide, to yell, to swing his wand, to do anything other than stand still in his own mind. Behind him, Sirius's hand closed around Harry's shoulder, steady, grounding. Hermione whispered, shaking, "Harry." Harry didn't answer. He held the latch. And in the real room, the mirror shard on the table shimmered. Black smoke bled from its edges, thin at first, then thicker, curling upward like ink poured into water. The air turned cold. The runes on the floor flared brighter. Moody's voice was a low growl. "She's biting." The black smoke formed a surface, reflective, shiny, like a mirror made of darkness. And inside that mirror, Harry saw a corridor. Not his corridor. Hers. Stone walls. Torches. A door with iron bands. Azkaban architecture. Bellatrix had reached through her network like a hand through a crack. And the network had answered by pointing her into the room with teeth. Bellatrix's voice purred in Harry's mind. "You're tired. You're angry. Good. Break for me." Harry's scar burned. He forced his breathing steady. Common room. Fire. Letter. And then Dumbledore spoke, soft, precise. "Now." Kingsley flicked his wand. The runes on the floor flared gold. The black mirror surface wobbled, like the doorway suddenly realized it was a trap. Bellatrix's laughter cut off. For the first time, Harry felt her hesitation, a tiny recoil. Not fear, suspicion. Her voice sharpened inside his mind. What is this? And that was the moment Harry understood. Bellatrix didn't fear spells. She feared being outplayed. Harry, for the first time, did something new. He didn't react with anger. He reacted with silence. He withdrew the latch, slowly, like closing a door with your fingertips. Bellatrix shoved against it, furious. No, no. And the mirror surface in the room erupted. Not smoke. A full breach. Bellatrix Lestrange stepped through. Not gently, not elegantly. She stumbled, caught by the sudden shift from corridor to containment room, hair wild, wand up, and the net snapped shut. Golden chains of light leapt from the floor and wrapped her ankles, her wrists, her throat like glowing serpents. She hissed, actual shock. Her eyes flashed around the room. Dumbledore, Moody, Kingsley, Sirius, Hermione, Ron. Then locked on Harry. And for the first time, her composure shattered. You, she spat. You did this. Harry's scar burned, but Harry held his anchor and didn't move. Bellatrix jerked against the chains. They held. Moody stepped forward, wand aimed between her eyes. Bellatrix Lestrange, he growled. You are under arrest. Bellatrix laughed, sharp, ugly. Arrest? Arrest. She writhed again, and the chains tightened, cutting off her movement. Her eyes snapped to Sirius, and her smile twisted into something cruel. Cousin, she purred, still hiding behind the boy. Sirius's face went white with rage. Harry felt Sirius's muscles tighten behind him, felt the old explosion gathering. Harry lifted his hand without looking back and gripped Sirius's sleeve. Sirius froze. The choice Bellatrix wanted, Sirius lunging, breaking the net, didn't happen. Bellatrix saw it, and the crack in her control widened. Her eyes went bright, too bright. You're training him, she hissed at Sirius, making him dull. Then she turned back to Harry, voice dropping into that intimate, poisonous softness. Harry, she whispered, you opened your mind to me. Harry didn't answer. Bellatrix's smile returned, slow, terrible. So, I'll open something else. She lifted her wand, still pinned, but her wrist had just enough angle, and spat a spell. Not a curse at a person. A curse at the room's edge. At the ward line. The air screamed. A crack split across the barrier, like glass fracturing. Hermione gasped. She's breaking the net. Moody roared, stunned. But Bellatrix had anticipated that. She didn't need the whole net down. She needed one gap. Because she wasn't trying to win. She was trying to take one piece with her. Bellatrix's gaze snapped to Neville. Neville, pale, standing behind Kingsley, protected. Bellatrix's lips curled. The other ending, she whispered. And she threw herself sideways, into the crack in the wards, dragging the chains with her like they were nothing. For one breathless second, the net strained. The crack widened. The room's air folded. A dark doorway flickered, like that portal seed effect without the seed. Bellatrix was trying to rip open her maze and slip back out. But this time she wasn't just escaping. She was reaching. Her fingers stretched toward Neville like claws. Harry's heart slammed, and he made the final choice of the rewrite. Not vengeance. Not pursuit. He stepped forward, not into Bellatrix's reach, but into the angle between her and Neville. He raised his wand. He didn't cast at her body. He cast at the crack. Finite incantatum. The spell wasn't flashy. It was a clean severing like cutting a rope. The crack shuddered. Bellatrix screamed in rage. No. Dumbledore's wand moved like lightning. A second spell, old, heavy, absolute, slammed into the room's edges. The crack sealed shut like it had never existed. The net snapped back. The chains tightened. Bellatrix fell to her knees, trapped fully, breath hard, hair in her face. Silence hit. Then Bellatrix lifted her head. Her eyes locked on Harry. And for the first time, there was no teasing in them. No delight. Only hatred and, beneath it, something worse. A furious, wounded sense of loss. You didn't choose, Bellatrix whispered, voice shaking. Harry finally spoke. Not much. Just enough to end it. I did, Harry said hoarsely. I chose not to play. Bellatrix stared at him like he'd stabbed her. Because in her world, everyone played. Everyone reacted. Everyone made the move she offered. Harry didn't. And that broke the myth she lived inside. Moody stepped forward again, wand still aimed. Kingsley raised his voice, controlled but official. Bellatrix Lestrange, Kingsley said clearly, you are under ministry custody. You will be transferred under Auror escort. Your wand will be confiscated. Your person will be bound. Sirius's breath came hard behind Harry. Bellatrix's eyes flicked to Sirius. Her mouth curved into something poisonous. Cousin, she murmured, you'll still lose him. Eventually. Sirius's fingers trembled. Harry held his anchor tighter. Dumbledore stepped forward, gaze calm and cold. No, Dumbledore said quietly, not the way you wrote it. Bellatrix's laugh broke, ragged, furious. They took her wand. They reinforced the chains. They sealed the room again with layered wards until the air felt thick and heavy. And then, slowly, carefully, Aurors arrived. Real ministry Aurors, summoned by Kingsley's authority and Moody's threats, confused and tense, but unable to deny what was in front of them. Bellatrix Lestrange, bound, snarling like a caged animal. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't a ghost story. She was a prisoner. Harry watched as they led her away. Bellatrix didn't look at anyone except Harry. As she passed the doorway, she leaned slightly toward him, eyes burning. This isn't over, she whispered. Harry's scar throbbed faintly. But Harry didn't feel the old fear. He felt something quieter. He felt the game ending. Maybe not, Harry said softly, too low for most to hear. But you don't get to steer it anymore. Bellatrix's eyes widened, just a fraction, and then she was gone down the corridor, chains clinking, Aurors gripping her like they were afraid she could leak through their fingers. The room emptied slowly. The silence afterward felt unnatural, like the world hadn't practiced what it would be like without her laughter in the walls. Ron exhaled shakily. We actually got her. Hermione looked pale, eyes shining. We did. Neville swallowed hard, staring at the doorway. Does that mean my parents? Dumbledore's voice softened. It means one of the hands that hurt them will no longer hurt anyone else. Neville's eyes filled. He nodded once, fierce. Sirius stood very still behind Harry, and when Harry turned, he saw Sirius's face was wet. Sirius didn't wipe it away. He just pulled Harry into a fierce, shaking hug like he was trying to prove Harry was real. You didn't run, Sirius whispered into Harry's hair. You didn't. Harry swallowed hard, voice muffled. I verified. Sirius gave a broken laugh. Yeah, he breathed. Yeah, you did. Dumbledore watched them for a moment, then turned toward Kingsley. This will not end Voldemort, Dumbledore said quietly. Kingsley nodded, but it changes the board. Dumbledore's eyes were calm. Precisely. Because Bellatrix wasn't just a fighter. She was a symbol, a weapon of terror, a conductor of chaos. And now she was locked behind ministry walls, denied movement, denied theater, denied the game. The Second Wizarding War didn't end that night. But something fundamental shifted. For the first time, Harry felt it. Destiny wasn't a prophecy that happened to you. It was a set of choices you refused to let others make for you.